Yeah, there's,
I just
Okay.
muted Michelle.
yep. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the August 23rd, 2021 Highland Park virtual regular public meeting. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any meeting, any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. During this meeting, we ask that all members of the public mute themselves unless they are speaking during a public comment period. If necessary, we may mute you ourselves. You may leave your video on or off at your option. If we experience bandwidth problems and believe that limiting video could help, we may turn video off. You will have an opportunity for 2 public comment periods. If at those times you wish to speak, please raise your blue virtual hand in Zoom and wait for me to call on you. If you cannot raise your virtual hand, or if you cannot raise your virtual hand or I miss your virtual hand, please turn on your video camera and raise your real hand. New Jersey law requires us to inform you that all commenters must behave appropriately in Highland Park. This means no screaming, obscenities, or inappropriate video displays. In the event of a speaker's inappropriate behavior, they will be muted. Linda, could we have the roll call, please?
Board members, please unmute yourselves. Everyone else, please mute yourselves. Ms. Cimarusti?
Here.
Ms. Coleman? Ms. Gowan? Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Magaziner? Ms. McFadden Nicola?
Here.
Ms. Preuss?
Here.
Mr. Roslevich? Mr. Woodward?
Here.
Thank you, Linda. Could we now have the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the
to the
flag of the United States of America and to
and
the
to the
republic for which it stands,
stands
one nation,
under
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
and
justice for all.
Thank you. So we have several communications. We have a communication on July 29th from Jesse Crossan, giving the board COVID recommendations from the Board of Health. He's the chair of the Board of Health in Highland Park. We have a July 29th message from Rob Scott on safety policies. We have a August 4th message from one Jenna Howard regarding vaccines. We have 2 messages from Elizabeth Weil Greenberg, one on August 10th, one on August 18th, on quarantining and vaccine policies. So now we move on to approval of minutes. So we have 3 different minutes listed. And we will vote on these, on approving them. They're the virtual public workshop meeting on June 7th, the virtual public regular meeting on June 14th, and the regular public meeting, virtual regular public meeting on July 12th. Linda, do we do a roll call for this now?
Yes.
Okay, so do any board members have any questions or comments on this? Okay, seeing none, let's have a roll call, please, Linda.
Mr. Krieger, you need to, someone needs to move, someone needs to second. Then we
thank
should
you.
be having our discussion and then we take the vote.
Sorry, I
That's
thought I
okay, you're on
moved it.
vacation.
Thank you. So I'll move these. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. So we're ready for the vote? Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Simoresti,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden Nicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
Yes.
Okay, I saw you nod your head. Thank you.
Okay, so now we move on to what everybody has been waiting for, which is the superintendent's report, where Dr. Nicosia will give a presentation on our safe school reopening plan for 21-22 school year. So I'll
Thank
turn
you.
it over to you, Christina.
Thank you,
Good.
Mr. Krieger. I know that we are all anxiously awaiting this plan. I want to say first, before I share my screen and start my presentation, that it was certainly my intent and the intent of the leadership team to communicate information sooner. However, if you've been following the news, things are coming out slow and steady from the governor and the New Jersey Department of Education. So even now, my presentation in light of the 1 o'clock update is now antiquated. So I will do my best to put this all together. Tomorrow morning, this will be posted on the website and emailed out. So like I said, again, I'll do my best here with providing the most up-to-date information that we have on our plan. So there's 3 major topics that that our plan goes through and that I want to hit on tonight: safety and health guidelines for a safe reopening, social emotional learning and mental health supports for our students and staff, and the instructional plan. So tonight's presentation is the highlights of the plan. I'm not going to go through the entire plan. The plan is a 6-page document that will be posted on our website. And again, like I said, it will be emailed out in English, Spanish, and Chinese first thing tomorrow morning. And so my recommendation, in which I say in my opening letter, is to make sure you read it thoroughly. A lot of information is in there, but like I said, today I'm just going to highlight on some of the key components. So just to give you an idea, our plan was informed by 3 requirements from the New Jersey Department of Education and the Governor of New Jersey. The first one was the requirement to have full day in-person instruction for all students is the second one. And the third is no virtual learning options unless there is some sort of large scale outbreak or as part of a state of emergency. So the idea by the New Jersey Department of Education and the governor in their road forward plan is that we're back to some sort of normalcy unless an event that's really large scale, and no remote learning options for students that wish to learn in that type of learning environment. The other guidelines that we use besides the road forward plan and our governor's guidelines are the CDC guidelines. We felt they were very important and practical to use to inform our plan, as well as legal limitations. So there were several issues that have been put in the plan that we needed to make sure we got legal counsel for, to make sure that we were within the legal rights to guide our plan. So that was all the information that was informed. In addition, we pulled together the leadership team and a central leadership team to pull the plan together. One of the things that I'm going to advocate for and highlight twice in my presentation, here at the beginning and once at the end, is that it's really, really important as a community that we keep our schools open and we keep them safe. And the only way we can do that is if we come together as a community. We're small enough that it shouldn't be a problem. We need I'm requesting that we do the right things for our students and staff. Make sure that we're making smart choices to keep the schools open. And that's where we need your help. We can control what's happening in the school buildings, but we can't control what happens when students leave the grounds and the buildings. So we want everybody to work together to make smart choices obviously inside the school buildings and outside of the school buildings, so that we don't have any major issues and that we can keep schools opening and operating as normal as possible. And that also requires, a request to keep children home if they're sick. That's really important too. I know sometimes we students get excited for school and they don't want to miss out. However, it's going to be really important that students stay home if they are sick. My third plea was actually to encourage the community to anybody who is eligible to get vaccinated. However, in light of our 1 o'clock announcement from the governor has pushed out a mandate for all personnel in pre-K through 12 public schools requiring vaccination or testing at a minimum once or twice a week. What that will look like, we'll wrap our heads around and push out updates for that. But my plea was to get vaccinated for those who are eligible, because that will help our cause of staying open and some sort of normalcy as possible. So speaking of vaccinations, like I said, here is my outdated slide already in light of the 1 o'clock announcement from the governor. We are obviously still going to encourage eligible staff and students to get vaccinated. And in our plan was the statement that before this, we couldn't legally mandate vaccinations without the governor or legislative mandate. However, now we have the ability to, and if this happens, we will require vaccinations. So we will comply with the governor's orders and we agree with them. Again, what that looks like, we have our timeline. We have to work out some of the details of what will happen if staff don't comply with that, or the mandatory testing and things like that. So those are things that we have to iron out. But I will send communications out once we do that. I will say tomorrow morning, the staff will get an email from me, and one will go home to students to request proof of vaccination. So this will be really helpful to use to monitor for quarantine purposes and the like. So we will request proof of vaccination. For universal and correct wearing of masks, all masks will be required by students and staff in the school buildings as per Executive Order 251 by the governor. They will also be required on school buses. For outdoors, we aren't requiring masks to be outside. However, as long as people especially that are unvaccinated, are within a safe distance of each other, that is fine. So outdoors, we won't require masks. However, we will be requiring masks for student, staff, and visitors into the school buildings. In the SAFE plan discusses what is the requirement for a mask. So we'll be following CDC guidelines on what constitutes a mask, and we have plenty available if staff or students need masks. For physical distancing in meals, the Road Forward plan recommends desks and other areas to, students to be spaced either 3 feet or 6 feet apart when practicable. However, some of our classrooms we just don't have the space, the physical space, or the staff to be able to maintain that. So we will do our best when possible to maintain a safe distance. Our area of concern, because we are requiring masks, more of our area of concern was mealtime during breakfast and lunch. So we are going to work on a cohort model. So Irving, Bartle, and middle school, they're going to be cohort by classmates and table mates. If someone could mute themselves, please. Thank you. Cohort by classmates and table mates. So this will help hopefully reduce the need for full class quarantines if there's some sort of exposure. So by cohorting the classmates for lunch as well and breakfast, hopefully minimizes that. For high school, they've expanded open lunch to include 10th grade. So open lunch will be for grades 10th through 12th. In addition, we have the cafeteria, the outside, and the gymnasium available. So there's plenty of safe places for students to eat. For Irving, Bartle, and middle school, we're still working on some of the details of that. It just might not be practicable due to staffing and just sheer location of space and supplies. Masks will only be removed during active eating. So if students are waiting online for lunch, walking to and from, or done eating and just want to converse with their classmates, they have to put the masks back on. So only during active eating will they be required to take the masks off. In addition, we will continue to promote hand washing and respiratory etiquette. So I know we've mentioned in the past, but all classrooms and around the buildings have sanitization pumps. So we can frequently require the students to sanitize and wash their hands. There will be routine reminders in all 4 buildings via announcements to wash their hands and sanitize often. In addition, at Irving and Bartle, they'll be getting videos and instructions during morning meetings. In terms of facilities, so cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities, we have air purifiers were put in rooms without any windows. I just went through a facilities walkthrough of the high school today and saw all those purifiers in rooms that didn't have windows. So they are there and they'll be plugged in and ready to go for when staff and students come back. UVC lights will be installed in all the bathrooms. We have MERV 8 filters with fresh air from the rooftop and through energy recovery ventilators or wall ventilators. So every classroom gets fresh air from one of these energy recovery ventilators. We have iWave systems in every air system in the district. And what it does is the iWave self-cleans. It's a bipolar ionization generator, and it actively treats the air quality. Probably something big on everyone's mind is what we're going to do for contact tracing and quarantine. And this is after known or potential exposure. So there's a couple of different groups that we're going through based on CDC guidelines. So for any staff or student that is vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine if they are not exhibiting symptoms. So if you were exposed to somebody that may or that tested positive or a potential exposure, like you're unsure if they've tested positive or not, you don't need to quarantine if you're not exhibiting symptoms. But if you are, obviously we would, again, if you're not feeling well, stay home. They should obviously continue wearing masks. And again, we're requiring that proof of vaccination so that we have confirmation on that. We don't want to put anybody who's not vaccinated, in that type of situation or around anybody who is not vaccinated. For unvaccinated students, if unvaccinated students are currently wearing well-fitted masks and properly, so over their nose and mouth, they do not need to quarantine unless they're symptomatic. So if there is a need to quarantine, they must stay out. Like if they're symptomatic, they must stay out of school for 10 days or 7 days after a negative PCR test. And that PCR test must occur on day 5 or later after exposure. So again, if unvaccinated students are correctly wearing their well-fitted masks, they don't need to quarantine unless they're symptomatic. So that was really important to us, which is, why we're excited for the requirement of the masks, because it definitely helps with the continuity of instruction. Speaking of that, for our continuity of instruction in the event somebody would need to quarantine, our grades K through 3 students, work will be sent home either via Google Classroom or Seesaw or hard copies. For our grades 4 through 12, we will have a quarantine option, which is a listening mode only in core classes, and work will be available via Google Classroom. So they could Zoom into the class, but in listening mode only, and the work would be available via Google Classroom. It's a little bit different for our unvaccinated staff. So the CDC has different requirements for vaccinated students versus vaccinated staff, unvaccinated students versus unvaccinated staff. For unvaccinated staff, they must stay out of school for 10 days for a quarantine or 7 days after negative PCR test after known or potential exposure to someone with COVID-19. And the staff must use their sick days to cover any COVID-19 related quarantines. In addition, any unvaccinated students or staff, if they are diagnosed with COVID-19, they must have a doctor's note that they no longer have COVID-19 or a negative COVID test before returning to school. In terms of diagnostic and screening testing, right now we cannot mandate testing under current laws for public schools. However, that has since also changed so that we can, again, what that's going to look like. We will discuss that collectively as a group to determine the frequency and how we're going to do that. And also for staff, figuring out the protocol for all of that. The borough and local drugstores do offer free testing. So we want to promote the use of that for in the event that someone does need to get tested. And again, like I said, people should self-monitor for symptoms and stay home if you are sick. So in terms of other support, so for our social and emotional learning and mental health support, we have quite a number of really great programs and supports for our students and staff. So in terms of our students, all students will be given a health screener at the beginning of the year. And based on the results of that health screener, we have different tiers of support for social, emotional, and mental health. So we have a tier 1 support in which teachers address the whole group and provide interventions for students in need within the classroom. So those are classroom-based supports. We have tier 2 and tier 3 supports, which are more pull-out based. Those can either be smaller group or one-to-one supports of students that are in need, and they would work specifically with care providers that we will have in-house to help those students. We have a plethora of after-school programs that will help the students in terms of skill development, but also for counseling. We've purchased a phone that is our mental health support team. So any student or staff can call this number 24/7 or text the number if they need mental health support, and someone from our teen center will be personing this phone and be available 24/7 to help students and staff in need. In addition, we have family supports because we recognize that it's important that parents are able to detect early warning signs and also give parents and guardians home-based strategies to help our students at home. For our staff, they're going to receive training on the health screener, on administering the health screener. We've hired additional mental health support to meet the needs of our students. So like I said, the tier 2 and tier 3 are outside of the classroom and their particular care providers we've hired to do that. The teachers also will receive professional development to assist students within those classrooms for the tier 1 interventions. And they'll also get ongoing support for that learning. So it's not a one-time workshop and done. It will be ongoing support to recognize early warning signs in the classroom and how to help support students in need. In addition, the staff are able to use the mental health support team via call or text if they are feeling like they need the support as well. I believe I said this at our last board meeting. However, I just wanted to reiterate, we have lots of opportunities for our students to be oriented back into the building. We think that's really, really important. So Irving is doing a bunch of great activities. They have a Snap and Wave event, their kindergarten orientation for Zoom, via Zoom for parents. They have a supply drop-off where students and parents can come and meet the teachers and see the building. They have plenty of newcomer videos, and they're doing an ice cream social tomorrow. Bartle will have tours for all 2nd and 3rd grade students. Miss Knapp is offering popcorn with the principal. There are newcomer videos as well, the supply drop off. And then for our 4th and 5th grade students, they need to contact the guidance counselor for an acclimation meeting and an orientation back into the building. So Miss Young is available for that. At the middle school, they're doing a 6th grade social event and tour. They do have opportunities and times for tours for other students, I believe starting on Wednesday, and they also will have video tours. At the high school, they're doing a 9th and 10th grade orientation. In addition, the 11th and 12th graders can schedule acclimation meetings with guidance to come in to discuss their anxieties or some reservations they might have, tour the building again. And that way these more guided tours with guidance can help to facilitate and address any concerns that students might have coming back into the buildings. And lastly, instruction. So our instructional plan is learning recovery through acceleration. So some of the things that we are going to be doing, so it's really hard for me to talk about every content area and every grade level in terms of instruction. So I kind of put them together in 5 bullets, 5 areas. We're going to prioritize standards using consistent and specific criteria. We're going to implement quick differentiation through vertical alignment of standards, emphasize rigorous and relevance of the learning through scaffolded questions and tasks. We're going to establish high expectations to instill a belief that all students can and will learn, and use multiple forms of assessment to inform instruction. And like I said, I was going to recap the beginning slide again to reiterate the the plea. At this point, I'm begging for everybody to come together to do what is right so that we can keep schools open, keep schools safe, and have as much normalcy as possible this coming year. But in order to do that, if you're a staff member, stay home if you're sick. If it's a child, keep them home if they're sick. Make smart choices outside of the school buildings so that, again, we can work together for this. And a last plea is to please get vaccinated if you're eligible. So I'm going to stop my share. That's the end of my presentation, and open it up to the board members for questions or comments. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Nicosia. So you mentioned that the 3-foot and 6-foot distances, you're going to try and maintain those as much as possible. So my first question is, are there classrooms where we even can't meet the 3-foot distance? And my second question is, as far as sort of maintaining safe distance, there were some districts last year that did rent the big tents and had them outside and used them at least when the weather was in a certain range. I mean, after a while, they weren't able to use them. But could you just remind me, or maybe Mark, what the thinking was behind that?
Sure. So I'll go first, Mark. So to address the question, we do have quite a number of classrooms, unfortunately, in which we cannot maintain that safe, definitely not 6 feet. In most cases, probably 3 feet, but it might be 2 feet. We're trying the best, but going through the high school, for example, we do have some classrooms in which we have 25, 28, or even 30 students in a classroom. So unfortunately, when we can, we will, but the numbers of classrooms, I don't have that yet. At the high school, I believe there were I have the list somewhere, maybe 4 classrooms in which it might be really difficult to do that. So that's why wearing the masking mandate will definitely help with that. Mark, did you want to discuss the tent issue, or do you want me to?
I could start it. Last
Okay.
year, when we reviewed the tents, we found they were very expensive, very difficult to obtain, but also they required various town approvals, like fire marshal approvals, because we'd need something big enough to be a large freestanding device. And we thought at the time, and I think we think now, that this is not the way to go. The masks are the way to go, but also we've put in, Christina, we've put in spaces outside, additional spaces outside for classes and for lunch when the weather is nice, not under a tent. And there were other problems with the tents, electricity into the tents and water and all sorts of issues. So we're putting in enough outdoor spaces for the students for lunch and for classes when the weather is nice, that that should compensate for not being able to easily put tents in.
Correct. Okay. Michelle?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if, well, first of all, I wanted to say, great job. I think you answered every single question I saw come across my radar, one way or another. Of course, not everyone's going to be happy, but I think you did a thorough job of answering the questions that the community had. The only other thing that I wanted to know was, do we have any kind of information for people that, you know, have trouble keeping their kids home when they're sick? Lots of people, they simply can't afford to do that. And so they do, you know, sometimes need to send their kids in if they have just a sniffle or just a cough. So my concern is that just a sniffle or just a cough is actually something serious, and likely something that they're not aware of because the test is not available in that short a time. You know, within a few hours, you couldn't test a child to be able to make the determination to send them in. So I just want to be very clear about any information we have for parents that are concerned about their kids being sick but might have trouble finding care for them because they are unable to take the day off of work or arrange for care. Not that I feel that we have to come up with an answer, because there's possibly some serious overreach from the school district trying to find care for children outside of school. But what are the parameters for determining whether your child is sick enough to stay at home?
Yeah, good question. So there's definitely the daily COVID form outlines that very well, which we'll implement if the need arises. However, I can send frequent reminders home in terms of the number of items that would qualify for those. So the CDC recommends there's sort of two categories. So, you know, trying to hit multiple items. And I can definitely send out information on that, Michelle.
Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
Christina, could I just, first of all, thank you for the work you put into this. This year has certainly been for us somewhat easier than last year because the government has given us some clear paths, like masks being mandatory. And today, vaccinations or testing, although it's still unclear what that means because the governor was very vague, but the mandate for vaccinations, which hopefully we can say we demand vaccinations and testing isn't an option in our district, but we don't know what the governor meant yet. So we're going to find that out. But it's been much more clear. I would say that the leadership team and Dr. Nicosia just did a very fine job of outlining it. And the plan itself, which of course I've seen, is very clear on lots of different points. I did, barring any of the board members' questions, in the interest of continuity, I'd like to ask the board if there's any objections to moving number 9, public comment, to up before board committee reports. So while this is fresh in everyone's mind in the public, there's a lot of people here tonight, that we take public comment, then we do our committee reports, and then we do our voting. Chris, you're okay with it? You're okay with it, Marilyn? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So
It's a good idea.
let's do
Yes.
that. Let's do public comment. And so I'd like to read in the, again, if are there any other questions from the board or comments? Okay, with that said, I'd like to read in the public comment section. Just have to move some windows around. Okay. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. So the first, I've seen 2 hands go up. The first hand was Mr. Kovac. And in fact, in this order, Mr. Kovac, Mr. Graff, and Ms. Weil Greenberg. and then Ms. Haley. So let's go in that order, please, right across the top.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please give your name and your address.
John Kovac, 206 North Third Avenue in Highland Park. I'm going to be speaking on a different topic, but first I'd like to say, Dr. Nicosia, I appreciate the hard work you've clearly put into this, and it's going to be challenging for everyone, and I wish you all the best. I am concerned that the Equity and Excellence Committee and the Curriculum Committee chairpersons are proceeding with an ill-advised radical agenda as if the defects of the presentation on June 14th have not been exposed. As I explained at the subsequent July 12th meeting, their findings are contradicted by the only evidence cited, an article by Natalie Wexler, and their recommendations are based not on fact or evidence, but on ideology. The Board of Education should put a stop to this mistake in the making. A good education teaches students to discern the difference between truth and falsehoods, between facts and propaganda, not one that teaches them to disregard the truth for ideology. You are the Board of Education, the top of the educational pyramid in Highland Park. You set an example for the teachers in the town, the students, and the parents. What is happening here? Do you really want to implement harmful policies that lack any basis in reason? Do you want to teach our children that reason-based evidence is irrelevant, that ideology overrides truth? It shocks the mind that this board would even consider compelling students to take a class that has demonstrated a failure of educational mission. I should point out, it's not the kids who failed. They are young and impressionable and doing what is expected of them. They were, however, used by people in this town who are and have been pushing a divisive agenda. The project presented by the committee chairs was undertaken in advance with the political motive of creating, quote, systemic change to promote academic equity, unquote. Its premise and motivation, a finding of systemic racism, was likewise its preordained conclusion. No input from guidance counselors was solicited, none from parents, none from teachers. Nevertheless, it was said about the teachers that they often assume that certain students need to go into certain classes based on their race. This is tantamount to an accusation that the unconsulted, uninterviewed teachers of Highland Park are racist. Their opinions, experiences, and reasons for making placement recommendations were ignored so as to avoid potential challenges to or evidence against the inevitable conclusion. The project disregarded sound survey methodology. The students who were interviewed were asked leading questions such as, do you think teachers perceive you differently based on race? Presentation slides asserted some students believe high school recommendations should be eliminated. Some believe it is elitist. Some, nothing about how many out of how many, numbers not given, percentages not given, just boldly asserted conclusions based on the feelings of students exposed to the biased views of other students posing leading questions. Based on the above, the committee chairs recommended, quote, implicit bias training, unquote, to prevent, quote, the underlying implicit biases, unquote, of the teachers. These trainings, however, are based on critical race theory and frequently resemble totalitarian thought control practices. They are useless at best. At worst, they are abusive. They inflict psychological harm, and they create racial resentment. What does academic equity mean under critical race theory? It means merit does not count. It means merit is a tool of white supremacy. It means categorizing students by race and treating them as innocent or guilty based on the color of their skin. It means dividing up Highland Park into Blacks and Hispanics against whites and Asians. It means imposing on students crushing burdens of history rather than teaching them how to think independently and distinguish fact from fiction or ideology. It means trashing the legacy of Martin Luther King, trashing his role in overturning real and widespread systemically discriminatory racist laws. It means dishonoring that which made King a national hero and justly warranted a holiday named in his honor. A recent article in Quillette by 3 respected mathematicians, Kleinerman, Daift, and Jitomirskaya, excuse the horrible pronunciations, Chris, you probably know how to pronounce them, argues that prioritizing diversity over merit is diminishing our ability to compete with other countries in STEM fields. The article cites credible research demonstrating that placing talented students from underrepresented groups in math programs that are too difficult for their level of preparedness can lead to discouragement and often even abandonment of the field. Instead, these students would be better served by slightly less competitive, more nurturing programs that accord with their objectively exhibited levels of performance. The authors oppose doing away with tracking. Wexler's recommendations deserve consideration. She is clear that the answer is not opening up honors classes to general enrollment, which, she says, makes them more like standard level classes. Instead, she recommends that elementary schools focus less on teaching disadvantaged students to read and more on giving them background knowledge in social studies and science. This, she argues, will give them context that will enable them to read better. There was also a suggestion by one student in the survey to pay more attention to the standards in the CP classes. This and Wexler's and the mathematicians' recommendations are reasonable proposals from improving the prospects of disadvantaged students.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mark.
Yes.
I thought that we were having public comment concerning the reopening plan at this point.
No, we're having public comment on anything. I would ask Mr. Kovac, since we've heard this all before, we have a lot of people in the meeting. Are you close to finishing your comments, sir?
Very, very close, and I don't believe
Please.
that all of this has been heard before.
Much
But
of it has.
Well, I dispute that, but let me continue.
Please
Baselessly,
wrap it up soon.
I will in less than a minute. Baselessly accusing Highland Park teachers of racism and sending them to a kind of re-education program is unreasonable. The proposal to make race, gender, and ethnicity class mandatory is unreasonable and dangerous. It amounts to mandatory indoctrination in a highly divisive ideology for every student in the school, many of whose parents would take offense and vehemently object. In fact, there is no basis whatsoever for any proposal made by the committee chairs. The Board of Education as a whole should reject every one of them outright and go back to the drawing board. You don't cut off a patient's leg when surgery to the foot can be the cure. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Graff, you have the floor. Please give us your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Brian Graff. I'm at 137 Hill Street. So I have some follow-up questions about the presentation on the reopening plan, and thank you for the presentation. I have a number of questions, so I don't expect you to necessarily answer all of them here, but I just wanted to note them and hopefully get some answers. So actually, I have some questions about the ventilation, which there was some information in the presentation about that, but just to kind of go down the list, I guess, you know, for the mechanical ventilation, I guess, you said that there would be MERV 8 filters in there. Organizations like ASHRAE recommend MERV 13 or higher. So I'm just, unless the system can't support that, right? So I'm just wondering if, you know, the reason why you're sticking with MERV 8s is because the system can't support a higher rating or some other reason. I also was wondering about the air purifiers, whether those are HEPA filters or something else. And then just in terms of the overall situation, because it sounds like it's a mixture of mechanical ventilation, you know, and then also spaces that just have windows and maybe a combination of those. But just in general, have you looked to or measured or sort of tried to aim for, you know, a certain level of outside air that's coming into a space? And then also just in terms of what the air changes are in that space, right? So how frequently fresh air, old air is replaced with fresh air, basically. And in terms of spaces that rely on passive ventilation, so through windows, whether if anything is being done to kind of make sure that, that air is actually coming in and going out in some predictable fashion when you're relying on windows for ventilation. So then just on the meals, I was just wondering, and maybe I missed this, but whether there is some eye towards distancing, like in the cafeteria or outside, especially when kids are eating unmasked, right? Also, with regard to the mask policy outside, you said that outside masks.
Sorry about that. Keep going.
That's okay. So you said that outside masks will not be required, though it sounded like if somebody's unvaccinated, there will still be an eye kept towards masking or distancing, but it seems hard to enforce, right? So does that basically mean that outside, for all intents and purposes, there won't be masking regardless of vaccination status? And then also combining that with the, I mean, I was pleased to hear that there'll be there's work done to provide outside areas for eating, especially. But how does that come together with the policy that masks don't have to be worn outside? So if kids are sitting together eating outside, right, is it still the case that they can only be unmasked if they're not active, if they're actively eating or not? And I'm sorry, I'm almost done. Well, actually, I think that might be it. I guess the other question I just have is because, I mean, even among adults, making sure that everybody is wearing their masks properly all the time is very challenging. So I was just wondering, what's being done or contemplated just in terms of, just trying to make that policy work, right? That kids should be masked, and how is that going to be dealt with? Like, if there's issues with that, and so on and so forth. Oh, and is that is the lunch outside? Is that going to be true at all the schools? Like Irving, Bartle Middle School, and high school, or are only some schools going to be able to have lunch outside when the weather permits it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. I can answer the first question, and that is our ventilation systems can't handle greater than MERV 8. They're old enough that and not that they're that old, but only very relatively modern systems can. And in our plans with the last bit of federal money that we hope to receive late this fall will be the renovation of or the replacement of our ventilation systems so that we could take better filtering, MERV 13 or equivalent filters. The other questions, I think many should be in the more full report. But if Christina, if you have anything to add, that would be great.
Sure. So a couple of the things might not be in the full report, but Mr. Graff, I will email you back as soon as I get information from facilities, in particular, the time frame in which air is replaced and things like that. I don't have that specific information, especially when you're talking about windows with passive ventilation and the measurement or aim for the airflow exchange. I don't have that information in the plan, but I will get that back to you as soon as possible. But yes, air purifiers are HEPA. That I know for sure.
And we could add that to the plan, Christina.
Yes, yes. And once, correct. And once I get the other information, I can add that as well, but I'll specifically email Mr. Graff with that information.
And thank you for your excellent questions. Appreciate that. Next up, Buffy, could you just identify yourself and your address, please? You're muted.
I am. My name is Elizabeth Wild Greenberg. Most of you know me as Buffy. Thank you, Dr. Nicosia, for that presentation, and also just for, just how responsive and really empathetic you've been, when I've reached out. My address is 6 North 7th Avenue. And I wanted to just say a few remarks about vaccines and also the quarantine policy, which I'm still sort of like processing it. So hopefully I don't get any of the details wrong. I'm the parent of a rising 3rd grader at Bartle. Despite the best efforts of the school's administration, the staff, my son's teachers, the past 1.5 years have really been a catastrophe for many public school families, especially female caregivers and young children. I am also vaccinated against COVID-19, and my son will be vaccinated against COVID-19 once he is eligible. It's imperative that the Highland Park School District really lead the state and implement a policy to require all students 12 and over, staff and students, to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. This is really the best way to protect our community from COVID and to prevent harmful quarantines. We know that vaccine requirements without a testing option work. If we look at Rutgers University, they are requiring students and employees in healthcare and public safety to be vaccinated. As of August 11th, Rutgers reported over 95% compliance among students. Among the more than 8,000 employees in healthcare and public safety positions, there is a 97% compliance rate. And so I'm asking again for our district to lead, not just follow the governor's executive order, but to actually lead and implement a vaccine mandate without a testing option. Testing of unvaccinated staff is financially wasteful, it's ineffective. If someone tests positive, the damage may already been done. They could have already exposed students to the virus and could trigger a quarantine, which is, I don't want us to get so used to this idea that staying home for 10 days is not a big deal. This could mean lost employment for people. This means lost services for students who, legally, are required to have certain services. This is 10 days of lost education. This is something that, before March 2020 was really unthinkable. And this also brings me to the second issue I want to raise, which is quarantines. I'm especially concerned about our quarantine policy and how it can affect children who are under 12, who are not yet eligible for vaccines. My understanding is that if an unvaccinated student takes their mask off while eating and someone in their cohort tests positive, they'll have to quarantine for 10 days or 7 with a negative test. I think that this can be avoided if we continue to think creatively, and I know that the district is already doing that, but we can avoid quarantines. We can space out kids, especially the under 12 kids. We can space them out. So even if, someone in my child's cohort tests positive, he will not have to stay home for 10 days if we're able to space them out, so they're not within 6 feet from each other. We can have younger kids eat outside as much as possible, whether that's using tents or other things. I do think we need to look into the tents issue again. I should also add that Massachusetts is allowing use of a test and stay protocol in which asymptomatic individuals who have had close contact with a confirmed infection can actually take rapid tests daily to monitor for COVID-19 rather than quarantine. And I actually just had the same question as Brian, which is that if the under 12 group will also be able to eat outside during lunch, and again, potentially, prevent quarantines, which I cannot fully articulate how incredibly damaging they are, both to caregivers, our ability to make a living, our ability to stay in town and keep our kids in these schools, and to our kids. And that was all I wanted to say.
Buffy, thank you very much. I I like the idea very much of the Massachusetts plan that you mentioned of testing every day rather than quarantining. We should look into that, Christina. I think that's in our hands. Some of the, and thank you as well for the work you've done, Buffy, on the statements to the governor. We're hoping for more, and we're hoping for clarification on this vaccination or testing once a week or twice a week. What does that actually mean for a school district? We don't know, and we won't know, I think, for some time, but we should know before school opens, and that'll help us significantly. I think that given our druthers, the board would require vaccinations for all staff and in the schools. I know Christina feels that way. I think the vast majority of our staff feels that way. I think the only issue, of course, is if we make that mandatory and then it can be completely ignored and force us to go to court in a case which we know we'll lose, that doesn't help us very much. But I think we're going to do everything we possibly can to keep kids in school and to keep our staff, teachers, staff, administrators vaccinated. And we'll work very hard on that. Anna Haley, you were next. Or just give us your name again and your address, please.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm on a new laptop.
Yes, indeed.
Never
Yes,
did
indeed.
on it. Okay, so my
Name and address, please.
Oh, that's right. Anna Haley, 135 North Fifth Avenue in Highland Park. I have a rising senior, and my older child graduated 3 years ago and is now in college. I think to summarize my thoughtfulness right now, one is around vaccines. That's probably not uncommon at this point, but the other is around leadership, communication, and transparency. I am feeling really frustrated that we are having this information shared and this public comments barely 2 weeks before the school year. What I can conclude from that is either there wasn't work on this over the summer. That cannot be the case. Or there was, and this is the first time the board and the districts feel comfortable presenting it. You all have to see, as much as I utterly believe you are dedicated and selfless in this endeavor. And my gosh, to lose a superintendent in the middle of this is unfathomable to me in terms of disruption. But the perception of that, on top of that, once again, this is the only leadership body I have ever engaged with that does not put out its documents like a minimum of 48 hours in advance. The thing that our superintendent acting presented on tonight, we all should have been able to see that at least 2 days before this meeting. The Board of Ed should have known about it and approved its release at least 2 days before the meeting, especially in a situation like this. You have to understand that the perception this regularly engenders in our community is distrust, is that we are not given any meaningful opportunity to weigh in on and give you input on what you're doing. It has to stop. There has to be a formal policy change that you have to be forthright about what you're doing and what you're wrestling with. That's a general point. Vaccinations, fully approved 16 and above. I and others in the community with similar concerns need to understand exactly what legal barriers you all feel you're facing in not having right away a mandate for everyone going into school 16 and above to be vaccinated. Rutgers is right next door to us. They took the lead in the entire country, being the first university in our country to regulate students, and others followed. The union, the faculty union, on which I'm a member, has tried to get Rutgers to require all Beta faculty. I think it's imminently unfair that if students are required, faculty aren't. We're working on that. But if we're, per Michelle's comments earlier, If we are, and I know we are, as a board and as a district, as a community, concerned about issues of inequity, the great equalizer in terms of SES and impact on employment and female caregiving and lack of full access currently to vaccines is to require people who can be vaccinated to get vaccinated. It's a social justice clear issue. We should take the leadership. We should be willing to be sued about it if we have to. If our state is not going to lead, we can. We can. The fact that we're about 2 weeks, like 2 weeks away from school, means that we've already lost the opportunity, because if people who aren't vaccinated, who can be vaccinated, get on that tomorrow morning, they won't be immuno-covered by it. And that makes me really extra fussy. I want to know, like, in the meantime, as we figure this out, and I wish we'd figure it out in the next, half hour or rest of the meeting that we're going to do and take the lead. I want to know things like, will families have a right to know? I know FERPA prevents this amongst students, but will we have a right to know if teachers are vaccinated, right? I'm going to say the first day of class at Rutgers, when I go back after a year and a half of online teaching, I will tell all of my students that I'm vaccinated. That's my option. It's not required of me. If we're not going to require vaccination until some period of time, I, as a parent, I want to know, and I'm pro-teacher, pro-teachers union. I want to know that my kid's teacher is vaccinated. If they're not, I'm going to try to make some difficult choices there. In terms of the tents, I'm a little confused, because some folks have said that Dr. Taylor said we have tons of money for tents, fire marshals and other issues. We've had a year plus to figure that out. Other districts adjacent to us have tents, so I'm a little bit not tracking all that. But what I'd say is we have a chance. We are a community of leadership. We've tried to take leadership on issues of inequity in race and class and ethnicity and culture in our district. We can do better than this. We can do better than this in terms of how we present information, when we present information, and in now with a fully authorized vaccine, saying our community needs this. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Anna. I did want to say one brief thing. We have legal opinion, and I've personally read the New Jersey statutes for schools, and they delineate very strictly what vaccines we can demand, and COVID-19 vaccine is not in that list. And so as much as this board would like very much to demand vaccines, and I would say from 12 to 18, and for every teacher, until we have an order from the governor or from the legislature, we cannot do it simply because anyone can just ignore it, or at worst, go to court over it, and we will lose. So we are one of all of the districts in the state, which all of the law firms have told us all that given the corpus of law, school law, New Jersey school law, we cannot mandate a vaccine. Has to be done by the governor or the legislature. Andrea Alexander, again, please name and address. And again, we would love to mandate it and be able to really mandate it so people have to do it. So Andrea, please name and address and take the floor, please.
Thank you. I'm Andrea Alexander. I live at 116 North 3rd Avenue, and I'm the parent of an incoming kindergartner and a rising second grader. One thing I wanted to add to what I had planned to say in my head is just based on your comments, that I'm hoping that the school board and the town are going to pass resolutions asking the governor to mandate the COVID-19 vaccine. I hope New Jersey School Boards Association is going to get on this bandwagon. I would assume that teachers would want all their students to be vaccinated. And if we need to get the state to take action, then I hope we're all going to work together to very strongly advocate to get the governor to take action on this, because it's a public health issue of our time. I did want to say that I'm really happy to see the quarantine policy has changed. I'm glad to see that we're following the CDC guidance that students who are wearing properly fitting masks do not need to quarantine, because as I just said, I'm the parent of 2 children who are too young to be vaccinated, and I feel like we're a group with like very specific concerns right now. I guess I kind of want to reiterate what Anna said. I'm hoping that the district can look into tents again. I understand this was looked into a year ago, but a lot has changed in a year. And I think that we should be doing everything possible to make sure that kids can eat outside as long as possible for the school year, because it sounds like that might also help mitigate the need for quarantines. You know, I'm also trying to process the quarantine policy, and I think if I understand it, essentially, if kids are in a classroom together and somebody tests positive, they wouldn't have to quarantine if they're not vaccinated, but if they're sitting at a lunch table together, that's the situation where they'd have to quarantine, which is why I think eating outside, which would make it possible to distance further, might be the way to do everything within our power to avoid quarantines. So the other thing I wanted to say is I've one grave concern about something I've heard today, and that is that if a child has to quarantine, the district will send homework. And I just find that completely, absolutely unacceptable based on my experience last year. My daughter was an in-person student who had a quarantine on occasion when work was sent home. She was a hybrid student when she had asynchronous days. And for a first grader last year, I doubt much is going to change for a second grader. Sending work home is not work. They're not learning. I work full time. My husband works full time. It's absolutely impossible to sit down with my daughter and do her assignments with her and oversee the work. I'm going to have 2 young children who I would need to oversee work. It's just not acceptable. I don't understand why. I don't see any reason why a teacher can't let students who are home quarantining Zoom in. If it's half the class is to quarantine because they're at a lunch table, I don't know why they can't Zoom in. If it's even one student, we have the technology. We did it last year, we have the experience, and I just Googled it. It's very easy to find. I know that the Bergen Record reported on August 14th that the Department of Education sent a guidance to all school districts saying that you should consider doing remote learning if you have students in quarantine. So this is not an issue of the governor saying no remote learning. The governor is saying if your students are quarantining, you can do remote learning. So I am hoping that the district will reconsider the idea of sending work home to kindergartners who can't sign themselves onto a computer, who can't go onto Seesaw and get the work without their parents supervising. K through 3, these are not kids who can get on the computer, sign on, download their work, read everything. They have to be supervised by their parents. And this goes back to the equity issue and the female caregiver issue. Who's supposed to be supervising that if their parents are working full time? And we're in a much less flexible situation this year because most people are going to be back in the office. So I'm just hoping that that is something that, in light of the fact the governor has changed his guidance and said districts can consider doing remote learning for kids who are in quarantine, I really strongly hope that the district is going to change that policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Rob Scott, you had your hand up next. And again, name and address, please.
I think actually there were other people ahead of me, but that's okay.
Well, you came up in the upper left, so that I'm just going right across the top.
All right. My name is Rob Scott. I live at 25 South 2nd Avenue, and I'm a Highland Park dad, and I'm a voter. And the reason I'm here is to ask the board specifically to show courage and leadership and vote a vaccine mandate for students 12 and older, as well as all staff. I think I know that the whole board is pro-vaccine and understands the accumulated scientific evidence that mRNA vaccines, including the Pfizer vaccine, which just received full FDA approval, are safe and effective. In fact, I'm positive. I'm sure the board is unlikely to disagree with much of what I have to say with respect to the practical and moral case for the vaccine mandate. In early March of 2020, we had little in the way of tools to fight COVID, but it became clear the pandemic posed a truly massive generational challenge. When Dr. Taylor finally canceled school under pressure, my friend Jenny Chapman said, gee, all the trees just swayed in town as all the scientists in town breathed a sigh of relief. That was all we could do in 2020. But scientists stepped up and developed mRNA vaccines. These have proved a scientific and a medical miracle. So now we have a tool, a safe and effective vaccine. This can be a complete and total game changer. But our vaccination rate is just too low given the spreading Delta variant, which is perhaps something like 3 times or more transmissible than the original virus. And that is just a fact. Based on state data for Highland Park, on vaccinations, which you can get from the state dashboard, and demographics from the last census, we can expect that something like only 57% of Highland Park students aged 12 to 17 are vaccinated. That means as students come to class in the fall and take their seat, turn to your right, and they can expect that their neighbor has a 40% chance of not being vaccinated. Turn to the left, expect the same. In a class of 20, we might expect 8 students to be unvaccinated. Now imagine one of those 8 catches the virus. Given the transmissibility of Delta, we can bet that the student passes the viruses to 2 or 3 classmates, barring any other interventions, okay? And Delta can elude masks, right? More so than the original virus. And for every 5 or 6 unvaxxed kids, about 1 vaxxed kid is gonna catch it, okay? That's the efficacy data on the Pfizer vaccine. And so say 100 kids catch the virus, we can expect 1 terrifying outcome, like a long COVID or something worse for some high school student. Probably someone who's already immune compromised or has comorbidities. But that won't be the end. No longer will the schools be a place that the virus waits to invade, right? So far the virus has been sweeping from older people towards younger people, okay? As we move from pandemic to endemic, it's going to sweep the other way. So the school will become a reservoir for the virus, and that will spill into our homes, threatening the old and the immunocompromised. And that's why this is not just an issue for Highland Park parents. It's not just an issue for Highland Park students. It's an issue for every single person who lives in this town. The virus will then pass to a little brother or a little sister under 12. We'll take it to Bartle or Irving. And then it will spread faster because the kids in Bartle and Irving can't get vaccinated. And because 40% of high school students perhaps aren't vaccinated, that's going to be more likely to happen. And it puts those kids at risk. And it puts those kids' families at risk. And then we'll have quarantines. And we heard from Buffy, we heard from Andrea how damaging those can be to little kids, right? I saw my little 8-year-old nephew this summer, and he was just so happy to be with us and to be able to be unmaxed because we were all vaccinated, okay? He had a terrible year. So even when kids make full recoveries, which most will, okay, we're gonna have de facto suspensions from school, and we're gonna have more of all of the, let's just say what it is, the bullshit that we've had with the pandemic. But there's an alternative, okay? This is the practical and the moral alternative, okay? How about we just have a vaccine requirement? What Anna said, let's just do it, okay? If we do that, then in a class of 20, right? If there's only exceptions for medical and religious reasons, and since I don't think there's a huge Amish community in Highland Park, it will only be medical exemptions. And if they're real exemptions, it will be for the rare people who are at risk for anaphylaxis. The virus just won't enter the high school. It won't come home. Our community will be a vaccinated fortress. We'll be like a Greek phalanx that Mr. Dykman talks about, or a Roman legion, shoulder to shoulder, everybody vaccinated, everybody's immune system primed and ready, all of us protecting each other. Other interventions like masks and testing will help keep our case numbers at minimal levels. And I choose this option, right? And that's the option that will lead to, we won't have to wear masks. It's practical and it's moral because it defends the entire community. I cannot understand why any sane human being would not pick this option. I suspect the only reason anyone on the school board has any hesitance, well, we heard it from board chair Krieger, and I get it, I sympathize. We don't want to lose a court case, okay? They're worried we're not allowed to, worried we'll lose a court case. Here's the thing. If you believe the vaccine is moral, it's right, but you aren't willing to vote for it or fight for it or do something, right? Then resign, make a statement. Send that statement to the governor. Tell Governor Murphy, 3 members of the Highland Park School Board just resigned because you, Governor Murphy, won't act to authorize a mandate for all students, right? Or better yet, just do it. Let someone sue. Dare the governor to oppose, right? Maybe you can't do it. Maybe people will ignore you. Well, we're not in any worse situation. And maybe the governor will go like, oh, right, maybe people should do that. And we, the community, the majority of the community is vaccinated. The majority of the community will have your back. President Biden will have your back. If you've seen what's gone on in Florida, he's had the back of school boards against Governor DeSantis. So I say, like, now's the time to have courage. Lead the nation, right? Follow the examples of school districts in LA that are mandating the vaccine. Follow the example of New York City mandating the vaccine. The rules can be simple, just the same as the measles vaccine, which we've all been getting, right? I had the measles. I gave the measles to my sister. I saw her suffer with a horrible fever. I worried she would die. My kids haven't had the measles. They all got vaccinated, right? So when it comes to staff, and here's the thing we heard, it's even more clear, right? The governor's already said that the staff can be required to test as many as 2 times a week. Hell, make them test every day, right? If you won't vaccinate, then test every day. Or have courage and just say, you know what? We're not going to wait to hear from the governor. We're going to pass a vaccine mandate for all staff right now. Go get it tomorrow, right? Let that email go out tomorrow and just let everyone know who works for the school district that the safety of the community is the priority and they need to go get a vaccine mandate, a vaccine. No weak-kneed vaccine and test policy that something can get out. And here's the thing. If we don't do a vaccine mandate, a lot of other really unpleasant things are going to happen, okay? We can risk a catastrophic outbreak. Maybe we'll be lucky, okay? Maybe we won't. But you know what? You'll also likely get sued for not passing a mandate, okay? As families with immunocompromised children look at their options, right? They're going to start looking for lawyers. Parents will also demand the right to know who is vaxxed. Anna Haley already brought that up. I'm going to want to know, are my kids' teachers vaxxed? In the school, the vaccinated are going to act to protect themselves from the unvaccinated, who they will rightly perceive as a threat, okay? I'm going to politely and nicely ask my kids' teachers if they're vaccinated. I'm going to do that politely and nicely because I want to know. I expect kids, I know a bunch of high school kids, they will loudly and proudly declare that they're vaccinated. I'm imagining the scene in Mr. Gold's AP history class when someone might say, hey, Mr. Gold, we are living history now, right? Why don't we all share each other's vaccination stories, right? Kids will go and they're going to find a safe oasis of the teacher they know is vaxxed, and they're going to eat lunch in that room with their vaxxed friends. The school will fission. And this will happen because we have been abandoned by our elected leaders. So can we just do the mandate? The end of the pandemic starts with vaccination, and we just have to do that. I know you all know this. I know you all want vaccination. And I'm just saying, like, now is the time to stand up and say, we don't live in normal times. We need to risk a lawsuit. We can't be conservative. We shouldn't worry about what the fire marshal says about tents. We should go to the town and ask the mayor for the permission to maximize our opportunity to hold school outdoors. Let everyone eat lunch outdoors, even when it rains, right? Because if we're 95% vax, cases will fall, and maybe we won't need masks anymore, especially once the vaccine is approved for younger kids in the spring. We need other things. We need testing. We need it at the schools. It needs to be convenient and easy. And again, the outdoor thing, folks have said this over and over again. I do not know why the school has resisted it, but let's just do it. Get a big tent. We can find the money for it. Hell, this town will raise money for it. We'll do a GoFundMe and we'll buy the most expensive tent you can find. So what I'm trying to say is have courage, exercise leadership. Do something, send a signal to the governor, pass the most stringent vaccine requirement on the staff that you possibly can. Show up and lead. And that's what I have to say.
Rob, thank you. Mr. Gold, could you identify yourself and give us your address, please?
Hi, my name's Alan Goldman. My address is 202 Grant Avenue. Most of what I was going to say was just said by Rob Scott. So basically, the vaccine science is really clear on it. It's the most well-studied vaccine in history. Over 100 million people, no significant long-term effects. The benefits are tremendous to the student that gets vaccinated, to the student in the classroom, sitting with that student who gets vaccinated, to that student's family, to the entire community. So I've had, actually, I should say, don't have any current students in school, kids, but I had 2 go K through 12. They had a great education. I want to really express my sincere thanks to the system and the school board for that. They got a wonderful education. But I think now, as Rob said, we really have an obligation to prevent tragedies in our community. And it's not really clear to me that by doing what the lawyers tell us, that that's more important than preventing those tragedies and doing what's the right thing. I think actually within very shortly, we'll probably get supported by Governor Murphy. In the meantime, what I think is the likely outcome of a vaccine mandate is that lots of kids who were just on the fence, who didn't, or whose parents were on the fence, will get vaccinated. And we may save a lot of lives in the process, even if eventually, say, New Jersey mandates a week later, or if the mandate is struck down. So I'll end there. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Clara Scott, please, next.
Hello, my name is Clara Scott. I live at 25 South 2nd Avenue, Highland Park. I'm here today with my friend and classmate, Adrian Schilling, and my sister, Lucy, who is going into her freshman year. And I would like to talk to the board about a vaccine mandate. The school has always made it very clear. I can't remember a time when it wasn't the school's top priority to keep students safe. I have been through fire drills, lockdowns. I have sat silently with my legs crazy sore and stiff from being in a lockdown for like 3+ hours. Safety has always been such a big and important part of what, the Highland Park schools stand for. And I think it's ridiculous that when you're given the chance to save lives, you decide to, not vote in favor of vaccine mandate out of fear, just because, the governor hasn't said that is necessary at this point. But it is. It's been necessary for a very long time now. I think that it is wrong to send students to a school where they're liable to get COVID. Earlier in the year, my friend got COVID. She told me I cried. I don't want to have to attend my classmates' funerals if someone gets sick and dies from COVID. I don't want to do that. I want to go to school knowing I'm safe. I can't comprehend being able to learn and focus if I know the kid sitting next to me is vaccinated and I could get the Delta variant from him and suffer tremendously. I have respiratory issues. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I'll fully recover. I urge you guys to consider, seriously, what is the worst thing that could come from a vaccine mandate? And what tragedies, will befall us if we don't? I think it is worth it to, pass the mandate. Adrian, I think, wants to talk a bit about Pfizer and stuff. So Adrian.
Well, if you're done, Clara, I'm gonna call people in the order I saw them. So Michelle, I'm going to hold off on you until the public is complete. And I'd like it if Allison Dunn could speak next. And Adrian, I'll
Hi,
get to
Mark.
you in a second.
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much. To Allison Cassell Dunn, 202 Lawrence Avenue. Can you confirm that you hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I apologize for not having my camera on. I'm in an area with very little service and no Wi-Fi, but I have two questions or concerns. My first question or concern is about the quarantine policy. Not all parents or guardians are going to feel comfortable sending their child to school if they have been exposed. Even with the mask and the if they're not showing symptoms, parents may feel more comfortable quarantining their student. I would like to know how that's going to be reflected in the attendance policy. Are those going to be excused absences or unexcused absences? And secondly, I would like to present a concern I have about the quarantine policy and assessment. We engaged in quite a debacle last year where students who were learning remotely and students generally as a whole were not taken into account when students received grades on report cards. And so if a child is going to be repeatedly quarantined, or if a parent feels more comfortable quarantining their child and the child is not of age to be able to live stream in and listen and not be able to learn at the same rate and the same experience as their peers and their classmates, how is that going to be accounted for when it's time to assess that child in the classroom or during their exams or their quizzes or whatever is adding up to what parents finally see? So those are the two questions I have that parents may be considering, especially parents of children who are not currently vaccinated or do not feel comfortable sending their child back if there is a risk of exposure. So if I don't need an answer on this now, but those are just two things that popped into my mind as I was listening to the policy, and thank you for listening.
Allison, thank you very much. Adrian, you're on now. Again, give us your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Adrian. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Great. Good evening. My name is Adrian Schilling. I live at 344 Becker Street. So, I mean, I feel all throughout this night, people have been talking and, just speaking up for how important it is to have a mandate in for the vaccine, especially, well, it can only really be done right now in the high school because it's 12 and up. But I just want to, continue preaching to the choir and stress how important it is to have a vaccine mandate, especially with the Delta variant of COVID-19, which has, which at this point, I believe is of early August, accounts for 90% of all COVID-19 cases. And the Delta variant, as I assume you all know, is it's more contagious than like original strands of COVID, and it affects the younger populations at a faster rate. So, I mean, the students, the younger population, we will be the most affected by this Delta variant. And as we look at the trends, we continue seeing variants popping up, and one can only assume that more variants will continue to come to light, and odds are those variants might be even more dangerous. So it's just so incredibly important to have this mandatory vaccine in the high school. And I acknowledge that there may be some legal troubles, but it's just so, it's necessary to have it. And I'm sure that the minor legal issues like pale in comparison to, the student's safety and the teacher's safety. And one more note, I personally know that if I am going to school with students, because I'm a high schooler, if I'm going to school with the students that don't have a mandatory vaccine, meaning that that there's a good chance that they're unvaccinated, I know I will not feel safe. And I've talked to many of my friends and fellow classmates, and they all agree that they will not feel safe. And if students do not feel safe in the classroom, then their learning is hampered as well. And so if only just for the, not just for the well-being of the students, like physically, but also for the mental well-being of the students, it's just so incredibly important. Thank you.
Adrian, thank you. I want to say that everyone is preaching to the choir here. The Board of Education is, I would say, and the administration, unanimously in favor of everyone who's able to get a vaccine to go to our schools or to teach in our schools or to be an administrator in our schools must have a vaccination. The problem is, it's not some minor legal problems. And also, none of us are worried about being sued. The school systems, you probably don't know, get sued, 20 times a year. That's not an issue. It's simply that mandates are literally unenforceable. And we have legal language from our attorneys. It is unenforceable. We're not Rutgers. We're a public school, K through 12 school. It is not the same. It's unenforceable. So, and by the way, our students have to take the MMR shots, and our teachers have to be tested for tuberculosis, and that's in the code. But our students do not have to be vaccinated for COVID-19, nor do our teachers have to be until today with these ridiculous caveats. I might admit and agree with Dr. Scott, ridiculous caveats about testing. We couldn't until today demand that mandate that our teachers and staff and administrators be vaccinated. But they aren't minor issues. They can be completely ignored. It's not even the lawsuits. They're unenforceable and completely ignorable. So you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I'm out there with everyone, and so is the rest of the board and administration. We want everyone vaccinated. We want it mandated. We've been working very hard to try to convince legislators and others in the state to do this. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Estelle, you are next to speak, please. Name and address, please. Are you still there? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll go to Abby. Abby, if you'd like to take the floor and give us your name and your address, please.
Hi, this is Abby Stern Cardinal. I live on Harper Street. I'm assuming you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I do not yet have children in the school system. I have a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, but they will be joining the public schools, I'm sure, before I know it. And just like everyone else, and it sounds like you as well, I'm strongly in favor of a vaccine mandate for everybody 12 and up, all students 12 and up. I do hear you saying what your limitations are, but I would encourage you to think beyond that. When you say that this is not enforceable, I still don't see a problem in putting it in. It's, you may not be able to go 1-for-1 with every student. And I do hear that you sought legal counsel, but I would encourage the board to, for lack of a better phrase, just be courageous in this area. I think we've all had to exhibit some enormous courage over the last 1.5 years in ways that we didn't anticipate. And I was really moved by hearing the students talk about how they'll feel being in the schools. Personally, having children who are too young to be vaccinated and frankly will be too young, probably will be in the last group. They're under 5, so they'll be in the last group. I'm counting on our community to keep my children safe. I do have to send them both to daycare, and I am only comfortable sending them to daycare because every person around them who is eligible to be vaccinated is vaccinated. That is a key component to everything I do. Anytime I'm around people, if someone gets at all close to us and I see that they are over, clearly over 12, I will ask if they're vaccinated. And the only way that I'm able to, continue having a, having a semi-normal life with my children is counting on our community. I'd also like to just share that this morning I brought both of my children into New Brunswick to Robert Wood and brought them for their second injection for the COVID-19 pediatric trial. I am taking a huge risk, and we got them both. We don't know if they got the real injection or if they got the placebo, but this is something that we're doing for our community. And I would ask you to similarly take a risk for our community in putting in a mandate, taking, doing things that feel maybe uncomfortable, feel scary as the board, things that, you're not necessarily, following what the governor's doing, but you're leading, you're taking the lead. And I'd ask you to take a similar lead in being maybe the first district to mandate them, maybe as others have said, take steps beyond what's required. I would love to see you require all staff and teachers to have a vaccine and not allow for the testing option. These things are possible, and I would just ask you to be bold in this respect. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Oh, and thank you for everything you've done for the community, getting all those people vaccines when it was impossible to do so. My wife just had her booster literally the first day she could, because she has some serious and clear medical conditions to be able to get the booster. And it was very disheartening to go to the CVS, which was giving them, and spend about 45 minutes there and not see another person in the store, no less online, to get vaccinated. It was awful. So people need to step up and get vaccinated, obviously. In any event, Eric Lipton, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Eric Lipton. I live at 123 South Adelaide, 1G, if you need to stalk me or something. Everything I was going to say was just said much more politely by Abby, which doesn't surprise me. I love that you're all pro-vaccine and that we're preaching to the choir. That's fantastic, but it's meaningless. It is absolutely meaningless, those words, if you're not going to take a chance on this, because let's face it, we are not talking about like hypotheticals here. We're not like, oh no, maybe this disease will kill a person, will harm a child. Let's not be cowardly about this. This is life and death stuff. So you know what? If it's unenforceable, all the better. Just do it. If it's legally challenged, you get sued 20 times a year. What's 21? Just do it. There is nothing to lose by standing up and saying, Governor, do this. And until you do, we're going to do whatever we can. We will do to the extent of our ability, and we will go farther. Let's get NJ.com to report this. Let's let everyone in town know that the priority of this school district is the safety of the students. And we will have tents, we will have testing, we will have all these wonderful things. But when it comes down to it, the one tool that really works against the Delta variant is the shot. And we are doing a disservice if we are not as full-throated as we can possibly be. And you guys, me saying this is meaningless too. I am not on the school board. You guys are. And you are the period at the end of the sentence when it comes to what this school's values are. You gotta just do this. You know, your lawyers may say that it's unenforceable, but you know what you say to the lawyers? be better lawyers. Because we're talking about lives. When drunk driving was unenforceable, it was still something to prohibit. We got to stand up for something. So stand up for this. Be leaders. Everyone else said it nicer. Be leaders, please. I've got a high school student who's vaccinated. God, thank you. And I've got a rising fourth grader who is not, and it terrifies me. I am severely immunocompromised. I'm scared for their health. I'm scared for my health. I'm selfish. I'm scared for what can be brought home. I'm scared for the quarantining. I'm scared for all the people whose jobs were on the line and sanity's on the line because of quarantine after quarantine that we know is going to happen, because all we have to look at is the thousands of school districts in this country that are having problems reopening right now. Google, it's all over the news. So let's just try something here. Please? Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy Scott, saw your hand up next.
Hello, my name's Lucy Scott and I live at 25 South 2nd Avenue. I have heard a lot of other people talk and I agree with what everyone said, and I would just like to share my thoughts as well. I'm starting my first year of high school and I'm extremely nervous, not because it's high school, but also because of COVID. I am nervous to be in classrooms and lunchrooms with people that I don't know are completely safe, and I don't want to bring home something to my family and for them to bring stuff to their work, and I don't want that to have to happen to other families as well. I have spent a year plus in quarantine online, and I'm finally going back into school, and I thought I would be super excited, but I am instead extremely nervous, and I don't want this to all spiral back into having to be taught in online schools. And I just want everyone to be safe, and I don't know exactly what to do to make sure that everyone does their part in keeping me and my classmates and their families and everyone safe. So yes, thank you.
Lucy, thank you very much. Estelle Postelnik, we lost you last time. Your name and address, please.
Yeah, this is Jason Postelnik.
Oh, hi, Jason.
Hi, speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, Rebecca Estelle, we're at 606 Abbott Street. We have a rising second grader. I just wanted to point out in regard to the issue of whether or not you have the authority to impose a stricter mandate than what has been announced earlier today. Just want to point out that I've been able to track down the executive order number 253 in paragraph 7, and that states that nothing in this order shall prevent a covered setting from instituting a vaccination or testing policy that includes additional or stricter requirements, as long as such policy comports with the minimum requirements of this order. And a covered setting may also maintain a policy that requires more frequent testing of covered workers. So there may, in fact, actually be some legal ability for you to actually enact a vaccine mandate, or at the very least, it clearly states explicitly that there would be the ability to impose more frequent testing. So certainly a lot has changed in the landscape in the last, not even 24 hours. Between the full COVID approval and the executive order issued by the governor. So it might be worth revisiting with council tomorrow. That way you might, if that option might actually exist to actually get the ball rolling on it and move forward. And obviously I and my wife are both in favor of a vaccine mandate. So I would encourage you to quickly explore that issue with council. And hopefully maybe it will actually be legally viable. Sure seems that way.
Yeah, I said, I think you might not have been in the meeting. I said that earlier this evening, that since the order was very unclear, very as published by the press, and I'm out of town, I'm doing this from my vacation. So I haven't seen any, I haven't been able to get online and look at the order itself. But the plan was that tomorrow we would talk to our attorneys and see what light they could draw on what abilities we have to even eliminate the testing option. So I agree completely with you.
Awesome. Glad. I just wanted to point that out because I know there's been a lot of discussion back and forth. So hopefully
Yeah.
that we do have an actual opportunity to move forward
Yeah.
on that. And then
Yes.
really a couple of other things. Just wanted to
Sure,
first
of
of all, I
course.
guess thank you for your service for working on a vacation. And then something I would just also like to encourage, since I have a young daughter who's not able to get the vaccine just yet, to encourage as much outdoor activity as possible, especially particularly lunchtime. I would encourage that. And then also, if I understood correctly, that there may not be remote teaching in the event of a live teaching in the event of quarantine. I would also support that earlier commenter who pleaded for some sort of live instruction opportunity during those, hopefully it doesn't come up, but if it does, that would certainly be preferred. And that was all I had. Thank you for your time.
Jason, thanks so much. Dan Russ, you're next.
Hey, everyone. Good evening. Mark, how are you? I hope you're enjoying your
Good.
vacation.
Thank you.
And Dr. Nicosia, welcome to your first board meeting with an hour plus of public commentary. So I just wanted to, again, Dan Ross, 802 South First. A couple of really simple points. The first is there was a time at which push notifications were sent before the board meetings to notify the public that they were happening. I came on at 7 o'clock, which is my mistake. I did see the email said 6:30, but maybe if a push notification could be sent out around 6 o'clock or a half hour before the meeting, it would be a great reminder with the Zoom link, et cetera. My second comment is, the board has the ability to limit public comment in certain circumstances. I think everybody is passionate about this topic and understand that there are a lot of strong feelings about it. I think that having a 3 to 5 minute time limit for each public comment is probably a wise move, especially when there are so many folks that are interested in commenting. Obviously, that's a style thing, Mark. That's a preferential thing. But please be aware that those of us that have been waiting, after hearing someone talk for 15 minutes, there's a little bit of a demotivating factor that you might hear from more folks in the public if some sort of limit is put in place.
Dan, I appreciate that actually. And in my 14th school board year or 15th school board year this year, I did that for one session and I didn't feel comfortable with it. I think this is a reasonable time for us to spend extra time talking and hearing from everyone and getting good ideas. But I think much longer than this, I might reconsider that. So thank you.
Yeah, understood. The third thing I wanted to say is I just appreciate the students who are commenting, and I think that the administration should really take note of the great efforts of students to become part of the public conversation, and really it's a great testament to the work that's being done in the schools and being done by the parents. So kudos to the students. I am sort of I have a different take than most callers. I would say follow your legal advice. And the last caller, I think, stated it very nicely, which is that if there's wiggle room within the executive order that allows, the Bush Law Group to provide you some leniency, then feel free to use that. But I would say otherwise, it's a hard it's a sort of a Hobson's choice of either you do something bold or you're weak. I don't think that's a fair either or in this situation. I think that following legal advice that's soundly given and pretty much the same legal advice as all board attorneys are providing throughout the state is a completely fair thing for boards of education to do. So I would say stay the course, be mindful of opportunities to extend things that you're doing. But again, the legal advice is there. You're paying those folks for a reason. And so I would say stick with that. Rather than talk more about quarantining and mandated vaccines, I think that the conversation really should be more focused on improvements in contact tracing and improvements to the instructional plan. I did not see the presentation and it's not online, so I can't review it. Last year, contact tracing was done with a sort of sledgehammer. If there was one student in one corner of one classroom, it seemed like the entire grade level was quarantined. It led to tremendous amount of time for students outside of classes. Quarantining really should be done with a sort of a fine knife. There should be seating charts. There should be, an understanding of distancing. I understand from student to student contact, obviously there may be much less quarantining, but contact tracing is really important to be done very carefully. It was not done over the last 18 months very carefully, and it led to a tremendous amount of time outside of class for students. The second piece of it is that we have to understand that there will be students who are quarantining. And so, proposing a plan that kindergarten through third grade students are going to receive asynchronous instruction after recognizing for the last 18 months that really did not work well for the youngest learners, that we did have hybrid instruction for much of this year, and there are many districts that did this very well throughout the course of the last school year. I would say that there really needs to be more focus on that. Teachers, I'm sure, are more comfortable using the technology. Students are more comfortable using the technology. And I would say rather than, fighting some war that against the state or something like that, we should be focusing on very local issues that we can control. The educators have great tools to make those decisions, and obviously a lot of knowledge and understanding of what's happened over the last year and a half. There are a lot of districts doing this very well, and I would just recommend that be the focus of future conversations. That's all I have to say. I hope I didn't go over my 5 minutes mark, but anyway, have a great night. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Dan, thank you very much for your very well thought out comments. Whoever's speaking, could you please mute yourself?
Pilgrim Monument.
What?
Pilgrim Monument.
I'm trying to find it, Mark, but I don't see it.
I am too. I don't see it.
I don't see it.
All right, I think it stopped. So listen, I see 5 hands up. I'm going to stop this public comment period at the end of the 5 hands. There's another public comment after the board's business. I'm going in the order of Rebecca Hirsch, Randall Solomon, Rob Scott, and Abby Stern Cardinal. So Rebecca, you're first, and then Michelle, after the public, certainly you're very welcome to speak up. So Rebecca.
I can wait, Mark, it's fine.
Okay, you have your hand up. That's why I say that. Rebecca, your first name and address, please.
Hi, thank you. Rebecca Hirsch, 331 Felton Avenue. Thank you so much for having this great long public comment period and hearing everyone out. Thank you for the thoughtful plan and for trying to update the school's policies as per the CDC guidelines. I just want to reiterate a couple of things that other parents have said much more eloquently than I have, because I'm standing on the side of a highway, which I'm also really grateful that these meetings are over Zoom so people can participate. I think that, I think that the board should feel really happy to know how much community support there is for a vaccine mandate and for all kinds of things that seem, that there are a lot of reasons why it's too hard to try doing, such as the vaccine mandate, such as, outdoor tents. Like the community will back you guys. Like we've got you. We will do whatever it takes to make this happen. Another parent already said this. We will fundraise for tents. I will call the mayor. I will go sit in front of her house if you're having problems with permits. Like I will do anything. And so, the obstacles, with the backing of the community, most of these obstacles are surmountable. So I just, want to put a little wind beneath your sails. Like, we got you guys. Like, if you guys want to do this and be more aggressive, like, we got you. We will help. This is a really great town that really wants to keep the teachers and the staff and the children safe and keep the whole community safe. And we want to make this happen, and we want kids to be able to have school. I am the parent. I have 3 kids, but I am the parent of a rising 2nd grader who had to endure multiple quarantines, last year. And it's really hard. I think it's really hard for people who didn't live through these quarantines to understand how traumatic they were for caregivers, parents, mostly moms, and for these children who can't do anything themselves. They can't do asynchronous work themselves. They can't do anything themselves. I understand that like there might sometimes be the need to quarantine, but we need to be doing like everything possible to avoid this, everything. And no obstacles about, it's too annoying to get fire permits, so we can't have outdoor school. So we're gonna have to, my 7-year-old is gonna have to be in quarantine once a month. Like that is not a good reason. These quarantines are so damaging. We need to be doing everything we can to make sure that they actually don't happen. Whether it's spacing kids apart more when they have to eat, or putting them outside when they have to eat, getting tents. I will go call the fire marshal for you, whatever you need. And what was it? What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, and really strongly consider scrutinizing the recently released state of Massachusetts plan, which allows kids in almost all cases to avoid quarantines if they've had a close exposure through rapid daily testing the morning before school. So if they get a negative test, they can still come to school. Test, they can, and they only have to stay home if they get a positive test. So it really cuts down on the quarantines. And the whole state of Massachusetts has declared that they're doing this for all of their schools. Again, if money is a problem for finding these rapid tests, like tell us, we got you, like we'll find the money. It's that important. It's so, like I said, it's really hard to state to people who weren't living it how awful these quarantines were, especially for the younger kids and for their caregivers. So that's all. Good job. We got your back. Like do great things and we will help you. We're here for you. And that's all. That's my pep talk.
Thank you. And the Massachusetts plan is great. And there's plenty of rapid tests. That's not the issue.
Well, I mean, if there's problems getting, people who can't afford them, or if the district can't afford them or whatever.
No. That is not, they're everywhere. That's not, and they're free. That's not the issue. The issue is, it's actually a great thing that came out tonight. It was that ability to do a system like that with rapid tests. So
yeah, it's a really good plan. I read it.
It's a very good idea. Randall, you're next. Randall Solomon, name and address, please.
Randy Solomon, 331 Felton Avenue. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So, I also want to talk about quarantining. You might know that there was a McKinsey report that showed that on average, students across the country lost 5 months they're 5 months behind where they should be. But of course, the report pointed out that that's an average, and that different school districts, based on their policies and a number of other factors, would lost more or less. And it seemed to me that Highland Park lost more than all the other surrounding districts. And it wasn't until a bunch of parents organized and really started riding the board and riding the schools that the school board really started paying attention. And I'm sorry to say it, this is not nice, but Highland Park was a laggard compared to other districts in terms of avoiding learning loss. And the plan that I heard tonight was, again, it seems to me, Highland Park on autopilot. And we're hearing plans that other districts are doing. We can't do tents, but I drive around and I see plenty of other school districts have tents. So I am insisting that Highland Park do everything in its power to make sure that we are not a laggard, but we are a leader, and that we are avoiding learning loss for the students. There should be no excuses. So that's what I have to, and I hope we don't have to be in a situation again where parents are, the board's not paying attention and students are missing a lot of class, and other districts are taking proactive steps to avoid it and Highland Park isn't, and parents, again, dissatisfied, have to organize to make the district be proactive and be on top of things. Thank you.
Rob Scott, you're the last speaker in this section.
So Eric Lipton said, be better lawyers. And then Jason Postelnik quoted the governor's executive order. And he was being a better lawyer. And he pointed out that it seems quite clear, no ambiguity in the text of the governor's executive order, that is a floor, right? That the district can do more, right? And I've, in my capacity at Rutgers, I've seen this. The administration has issued things that are a floor, and then our department goes and does more. So it seems like you can absolutely certainly do one of two things. You can either A, go beyond the governor's order and simply require vaccination of all staff, period, right? Going above and beyond. Or you can be, slightly more tentative, and you can go ahead and you can require that staff who refuse to vaccinate go get a PCR test every single day, right? And that would be standing up. And the last thing I wanted to address.
Wait. I earlier on said that we're evaluating that order and haven't gotten any results yet back on what we can and can't do. So I agree with you completely. If we can mandate vaccines based on the order, we will. And if we can mandate testing every day, so it's so abhorrent to those folks, they go out and get a damn vaccine, they will get the vaccine. So I don't disagree with anything you've said thus far.
Excellent. The next thing
is, I said it earlier as well.
I think one of the best things you said, Mark, is you said, we're not afraid of the lawsuit. It's just unenforceable. So here's the deal. If it's unenforceable, pass it. No harm done. We're in the same place we are now, right? Right now, we're just sort of like begging people, oh, please go out and get vaccinated, right? Let's ratchet that up a little bit, okay? We pass a mandate, at the very minimum, it'll make the newspapers, might make the New York Times, right? It will lead, because let's be honest, in a few years from now, it's going to be the case that every school kid is going to get a COVID vaccine, just like they get a measles vaccine. That's going to happen. So let's lead.
Hopefully in a few weeks from the governor's desk. So we don't have to have this discussion.
So lead the governor, pass the unenforceable mandate today. And instead of it being in 3 weeks or 3 months, it might be in 2. And that's what I have to say. I hope you guys, and I hope one of the best things about Highland Park and about you all as the board is there's public comment. People said a lot of things. Maybe there's a lot of preaching to the choir, but I would love to hear the board discuss the issue amongst themselves.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, so I'm going to stop the public comment now and go on to board committee reports and recommendations. Following that, we will vote on those items. And then there will be, give me 1 second, I lost my agenda. Following that, there will be another chance for public comment. So give me 1 second, folks. I lost my agenda here. So I'm working purely from online, which I often don't. Here it is. Okay. Let's see. Agenda. Okay, I got my agenda back. So, okay, so we'll start off with curriculum and instruction. Michelle, could you present the curriculum and instruction items, please?
Yes, I would love to. I didn't know if it was appropriate to make any comment because my hand was raised before, but I'll leave it for later.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a very short curriculum and instruction list. I only have 2 items. One of them is the usual approval of field trip requests. And if you look at the trips that are being taken, it's some really lovely stuff that I assume is being done by the GLOW program. And it makes me happy to think that kids are going out and doing things in the midst of all this craziness. Item number 2 is approval of university graduate students for teaching internships, junior practicum and observation. And there are 2 teachers that are willing to take some student teachers on. And they are all music student teachers, which also makes my heart very happy. I encourage lots of music listening in this time and deep breathing. And that is my curriculum and instruction.
Thank you. And now any board members with questions or comments? Okay, so seeing none, we have the Equity and Excellence Committee, which did have a committee meeting earlier this month, and Marilyn is going to present that.
Hi there. So I'm presenting for Monique. The meeting was held on August 12th. and it was Monique, myself, and Dr. Nicosia. We did have lots of lengthy discussion. It was a very productive meeting. I'm just going to cover the very brief agenda topics. Some of these things will definitely be coming up at board meetings in the future. Our first topic that we spent considerable amount of time on was the AP and honors disproportionality data. Dr. Nicosia had gathered in the past 3 years some data, and we looked at it. And my takeaway from that was that there has not been a significant change over the last 3 years. I think all of our takeaways was in the percent of students that that are in the underrepresented populations that take honors and AP classes. So I don't think that's too much of a surprise. I mean, but that was the overall takeaway. And it leads into what Dr. Nicosia told us about, which was that there will be a committee formed starting maybe early October with all the significant stakeholders to come up with action items to move forward, to expand access to the AP and honors classes. The goal, and Dr. Nicosia, y'all can feel free to step in here if I don't get this right, is to start out in October once hopefully everybody's settled in, and look at what those action items would be that would support students to be successful, and how we would communicate the opportunities that are available. We even talked about the independent study opportunity that maybe students don't know about, that some do and some don't, and begin even this year to put some of those action items into place before the winter scheduling season starts. And then going forward, of course, we expand that. The goal is to provide an equitable education for all students. It does not lower, the focus is certainly not on lowering expectations in any classes or limiting access to any group. It's quite the opposite. And it's would be a process that will be a win for all students when we get there. And it's certainly something the board has talked about way before my time on here. So that was a big part of our conversation, and Tara Young was going to work with Dr. Nicosia on getting that committee up and running when the time is right, in the fall. We talked a little bit about grade recovery and what's happened over the summer with the SHIP program. And I think we got some data, but I'm sure there's been a lot of changes in the last 10 days. Students are completing courses, seem like a good number are. There's certainly a significant number that weren't at that point, but we're 10 days later and they're continuing to work. And when this is all said and done at the end of the summer, I think what I came away with was that the middle school and high school principals and leadership will look at the individual students and begin to kind of be creative in how we work with individual students to continue their progress to recover the courses that they may have lost, through the pandemic. The last topic that was an important one that we talked about was the NHS, the Honor Society, under the leadership of Mr. McCrae, we had the largest and most diverse class of NHS students this past year. And Dr. Nicosia shared some of that data and what lessons we can learn from the success they're having there and apply it to some of our other initiatives in increasing equitable education. I think those are the main topics. Dr. Nicosia, anything that I missed that you think I should add?
No, you did a fantastic job. We talked about a lot, so that was a really good recap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Does any board members have any questions or comments?
Yes. Can I
Michelle.
ask, I just want to ask Marilyn if you have any additional information about the NHS under Mr. McCrae's leadership. What changed, if you have any specifics about that, and what is the demographic, I guess, breakdown, if you have that as well?
So it was shared at our meeting, the demographic breakdown, but I think there was communication was a big piece of it. There was a lot of communication with teachers and students. Yeah, I'm not, you want to rescue me here?
I'll
sorry,
jump in.
Sorry, Marilyn.
That's okay.
So we, the GPA was moved from a 3.5 to a 3.0, expanding the students' abilities to get into National Honor Society. In addition, we opened it up to sophomores to expand our data set. In addition, students were personally contacted by members of the NHS, by Mr. McCrae, by teachers. And like Marilyn said, there was a lot of push to really communicate and reach students on a personal level to encourage them to participate, because it's, I'm not as familiar with the steps, but it's definitely an application process. And there's a whole process that is involved in, being inducted into the NHS.
Great,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. Darcy?
Hi, yeah, just real quick, I wanted to say how exciting I think that NHS news is, and just what a bummer the other news is, because like you said, Marilyn, for years, this has been a focus of the board. And, so I look forward to a committee being formed and some real dedicated time and energy being put towards this, because I feel like, this has kind of been like a boulder we've been trying to push up a mountain for a very long time, with board members, kind of trying to draw attention to the gatekeeping procedures that are in place for a lot of these classes, and saying, even if we're trying to be more, trying to encourage more kids to try these classes, with the gatekeeping kind of protocols in place, it makes it next to impossible for students to do so. So, I'm hoping that'll be a real focus of that committee, is looking at what gatekeeping measures really need to be removed, and that we really, and Christina, I know you've done with this, with all the other work that you've done, really consult the experts in this field, and there are a lot of them, to really give us really strong, solid guidance on how to move forward with the changes that we need to make. I mean, they're really big systemic changes that would need to be made. So I look forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you, Darcy. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm gonna move forward with a discussion of the finance and facilities agenda list. So we have a few new items. We have a bill list for the first half of July. Number 4, we have the approval of the treasurer's report. Number 6, approval of the board secretary report and the Board of Education certifications and budget transfers, items 7 through 9. We have some new contractors for professional services in number 11. And most of these are repeats of groups that we've done in past years. We have, I think, let's see, we have number 15, an acceptance of donation of masks from Armbrust American of 2,000 student masks and 2,000 adults disposable masks with a value of $1,900. Submission of the ESA Title I SIA grant for $10,000, and then the approval of a non-public school technology purchase for a local yeshiva, which is not money that the board spends, but has to go through board approval based on the current law. So that's the new items, and the other items we went over earlier in the month. Does anyone have any question on the board have any questions on any of the finance items? Darcy.
I was just a bit curious about the donation of masks.
I don't know. I guess they assumed that they must be giving them to lots of districts, and I'm not sure why. Perhaps they can't sell them. They're on every street corner now. So I don't know.
If I can just add in, so Brooke, I just want to shout out to Brooke Baldwin. I know she's not on the call, but our funded programs and district initiative supervisor, she's been really spearheading a lot of ways to get donations for things to help offset the costs for the district. Masks were one of them. She got some smaller items like a CVS gift card to help with school supplies and things like that, but she's really pushing hard to try to get some donations to help offset any related costs that we might incur.
Well, good. Then I'm glad I asked, and we'll give her a nice shout out and thanks.
Yeah, she's done a wonderful job. And I would say I wasn't trying to demean the gift giver in this case. We're very appreciative, but we now we're very able to get masks, and we've gotten many tens of thousands of dollars from the federal government, especially to buy things like masks. but this is great. So that does offset some of our expenditures. So I'd like to go on to personnel, and I thought that Anne might make it this evening, but she couldn't. So Chris, could you just go through these, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we didn't meet since the last meeting.
Did we lose the sound for the whole meeting?
I don't.
Oh, there we go.
Did we all lose it?
I think we did.
Yeah.
We're back now, it seems.
But
I
that
can't
was
hear you,
wild.
Darcy. I thought it was my machine. It's not my
Me
usual
too.
machine.
Oh, should I keep
There you
going?
are. Yep.
Oh,
There you
there,
are.
okay.
We lost you, Chris.
Oh,
Whoa.
okay.
God, I thought it was me. I was having a
We all lost
conniption
each
here.
other.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay,
No,
so
it's okay,
I
not
was
your
just-
fault.
Yeah, so the new resignations are Carly Miller, we're sorry to see go, special education teacher, Donna Claire Johnson, paraprofessional, Ethan Lefkowitz, and the Kyle Harper tech crew. We have a number of new people appearing. So very happy that we have a new choir teacher, I believe, Miss Hodge, correct me if I'm wrong. School psychologist is number 19, Dr. Shepard, very well qualified. And Marilyn Menninger, new Bartle Elementary School teacher coming from West Windsor, among other places. 23, 24, 25, they're positions that already existed that we're filling. And 29 through 35 are approvals of paraprofessionals. 37 is a sidebar agreement about the cross-country coaching. I don't know much about that, but Mark and Christine, I'm assuming that this more or less continues what we've been doing with the cross-country program. You can correct me if I'm wrong after that. And yeah, the remainder of the items are professional development and other things like that.
Chris, thank you. I know that we had a sidebar for the cross country. I did not get the details. I might have been away. Christina, do you anything to add?
Yeah, so it was before July, there was the agreement, I believe, that we were going to expand our cross-country program to the middle school. So we just needed to have a sidebar because it didn't exist. I think that it was being, if my understanding is correct, that it was sort of a trial last year or something like that. And then we needed to memorialize it since it wasn't in the full contract. So that was the sidebar agreement, was to memorialize it as a position in the contract.
Excellent.
Oh,
If
Linda
I can-
can add.
No, I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to make a note of one little slight typo on item number 2. The employee number 1117 should be 1177. That's all.
Thank you, Linda. And I just lost my agenda again. Okay,
Oh, Marilyn has a question.
Marilyn,
Yeah,
please.
the skimming this personnel list, there are a number of people who are like taking on, I guess I would call it a 6th assignment or however you refer it. Are those for, because some of them are special ed, some of them are language. What is that because of positions that we have not yet filled? Is that where that's happening?
So typically we usually budget for a number of them, and sometimes it's just because we sheer numbers of the classes. We might need one extra section. And so we're not going to hire, a teacher for one section. So it depends on the situation. In some cases, it's because we just need one extra section. of a certain class for numbers, especially with special ed, when we teeter over the number of students, we have to legally open up another section. I don't think, and then I believe in this case for special ed, the maternity leave at the high school, we weren't able to fill a position for that. So in lieu of filling that position, we're giving the teachers a 6th section to balance out the fact that we weren't able to hire a long-term sub.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, so seeing none, we should go on to policy. So Darcy, anything new in policy?
As you can see, nothing on the agenda
Okay.
right now, but the update is that Christina and I did finally get a chance to sit down last week. Delay being completely on my part and having too much on my plate and not being able to make it into her office, but we finally got to do that, and I think had a really productive meeting and came up with some really solid procedures to put in place to move policy along now that we are almost caught up. So on the next agenda, actually for your next committee meetings, you guys can expect some policies. Christina and I set up a plan so that as soon as policies come in on a policy alert, that Susan will do her magic of doing the, the analysis of our policy versus the new suggested policy. And then Christina will take those policies, divvy them out to any staff members that may need to keep, taking a look at them, such as Linda, if it's a finance policy, or, Christina herself, or maybe Susie, if it has to do with special ed. And then those policies will come to the committees and Christina will dole those out, other than the policy ones, which will come back to us. And then once they go through those committees, then they'll come back to policy. So I think we've got a good solid plan to kind of get through things more quickly, not have things back up on us. But that said, for next month, be ready, everybody. You're going to have some policies to review in committees, and you're going to have some curriculum and equity and excellence policies that they've already looked at, that policy will now look at, and then we should see on the next agenda. So the next couple of agendas should have a nice chunk of policy on them. And then we'll just be dealing with updates as they come in. That said, I also gave Christina a list of policies that I had gotten a while back from Susan, I believe, from Strauss Esme, with policies that need yearly attention. And when Christina and I looked at that, it really looked like it was almost more than policies that the board needs to look at every year. It's policies that, like, administratively have some requirements around them. So Christina sent that to Jonathan to have him take a look at that, and so that she can, we'll figure out some way to make sure that we're in compliance with all of those policies and everything that needs to be done for those. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, and just, I know we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but in listening to all the public comment tonight, Christina and Mark, as you move forward, now that we have this new executive order and, we take into consideration all the public comment that we heard tonight, if there's any thoughts about doing something above and beyond what is in the executive order, I'd love to be part of those conversations. If we wanted to do some kind of resolution or something to that effect, then I'd love to be a part of that conversation, because, I agree with Mark. I think all, if not, most, if not all of us, feel very strongly about, wanting all of our students and staff who can be vaccinated to be vaccinated. So if we have some wiggle room there, we'll see what we can do. So.
And Darcy, I wanted to say that before we make any kind of decisions or anything about mandates, further mandates, not only for the staff, but I want to talk to the attorneys about what wiggle room we have in general, and what we could do, and what the unenforceable or not, what the outcomes could be.
Yeah.
And especially in all the public comment we heard tonight. And so I think if later this week, I'll be home very shortly. Later this week, I think I'd like to set something up where we could talk to talk to the attorneys and try to make some more informed decision, especially with the governor's order.
Because the important part also that I think, maybe is important for the public to hear is, if the board, were to just go off tonight and approve something, but Christina doesn't have a plan in place for enforcing that, or, things have to be, the board can't just do something and then be like, go do it, these things work when we're all doing them together, right? So if the board and the administration is working together to craft some sort of policy and procedure simultaneously, that's how it's going to be the most effective and the most impactful. So, I think it's important everybody knows that we're listening and that we hear them, but we want to do it thoughtfully and mindfully and in a way that it's going to have the most impact as possible, especially if it's not enforceable.
Chris, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up in new business, but since you started talking about the discussions with the lawyers now, this is the second time that I've been on the board where we've been urged to do some civil disobedience. The first time was when Pastor Seth got up and urged us, in the case of gender neutral bathrooms, that if the law wasn't on our side, then do it anyway. And this is the second time that people are saying that, even if the law isn't on our side, then we should do something. And, it is a civil, this term civil disobedience, it is a civil rights issue. There are kids that are having their civil rights deprived because of the pandemic. And I would, maybe in the discussions with our legal counsel, maybe what we can ask them is what kinds of civil disobedience we can do in this situation. Are there ways that we can break the law that are not going to put the district in huge financial jeopardy, and really, push the governor about that. One of the things that the civil rights movement had was lawyers, and they paid very careful attention to what the law was, and the lawyers advised them how they could proceed to sort of get the law changed. I think that's what we need to do here as well.
Chris, thanks. Marilyn? You're muted. You're muted.
I know. Same thing. I don't want to take the time. My question really was, when will there be an opportunity? Can we create an opportunity for the board to discuss, maybe giving a day or two to look over the new governor's decree today, and then could we all meet to see where we go with this as a board? I'm not sure that right now is the time to discuss too much more. We've heard it all this morning from the public.
We can't meet as a board.
Okay.
We'd have to have let's say, call it an emergency board meeting.
Okay.
But we could certainly have a paper from Christina, from our lawyer, with outlining some thoughts from our lawyer, and then have not orchestrated discussions among board members who want to talk about it. And then we could make a decision, then it's something that I could talk to Anne, or Darcy just volunteered, and Christina, and get together and try to decide if we want to put together an emergency meeting or wait till our next meeting and take some action.
Seems like time.
We have to do it very carefully. We can't make a decision in one day and just say we're doing this without, I'd say, Rob asked me, what kind of ethics questions do we get into? Someone suggested perhaps we three of us resign. That'll get someone's attention. That's not going to get attention. What would get attention is if we do something and we get removed by the ethics commission for doing something that was civil disobedience. That would get my attention. So I think we need to think about this very carefully. And I don't mean think about it carefully and spend a year. I mean, find out from the lawyers as quickly as possible, what wiggle room do we have in the current order, which came out about 8 hours ago, and what the lawyers believe. And we have what I believe, at least in my 10 years on boards of education, is the finest legal help we could possibly have. All they do is school board law. They know what they're doing. They're very smart. And find out what is our wiggle room, and what's our wiggle room if we say we want all students 12 and above mandated. And we have been asking them that, and we've gotten pretty unequivocal answers, but now we have this new this new mandate today from the governor. So let's find that out. Rob, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, well, a question, and just to say that if it takes a special meeting and that we find out that we can vote for a mandate for all students 12 and up to be vaccinated, then I think we should do that as soon as possible. Have a special meeting that we go ahead and do that. My only question was whether or not there was any ethical implication that could remove us from office for voting for such a thing. But if there is no complication there, I think that we should go ahead, even if it is unenforceable, that it's upon us to act on that and put forth that kind of mandate.
Yeah, I think we should talk about it and find out all of the details. More, we have gotten, I would say, unequivocal legal opinions, but I think we want to get more, especially with this new order. I think we want to get more information and more what ifs and find out, and then perhaps do something more. So thank you. And Chris, you wanted to speak again.
Well, I just, since I'm not allowed to ask the board legal counsel myself, but please ask them what illegal things we can do. It's not just a question of
Yeah.
the law.
Yes, of course. No, I understand. I understand that. One of the problems, by the way, is directing a superintendent, especially an acting superintendent, to do something illegal, which then can be refused because they can remove her. And in fact, by the letter of the law, she has to be reapproved by the State Commissioner of Education every 3 months, which they've never taken by the letter of the law in the past. But with the new Commissioner of Education, they are doing the letter of the law every 3 months. We need a reapproval of an acting superintendent. They could simply say, she follows what you're doing. If Christina follows what you're doing, we're removing her from her job. And you know, in making an unenforceable, and I wouldn't call it illegal. It's not that it's illegal as much as it's completely unenforceable. And I have read the law myself, and it's completely unenforceable. I mean, I agree. You know, the lawyer pointed us at it, but we can make some decisions there and then see what they could do. And that's my greatest fear, is they just then put a superintendent in that they choose. So I think we have to think very carefully and be mindful of what Dan Ross said, which is fighting the governor and the Commissioner of Education may be a battle that we'll never win, including on the state aid side. So the community has our back, but when we lose, I don't know, it's $4 or $5 million, that may be a problem. So let's find out more, and let's find out more, please. Let's start moving these. It's getting very late. Let's start moving these agenda items. Curriculum. Michelle, could you move the curriculum items, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I would like to move items 1 and 2 under curriculum and instruction.
We have a second?
Second.
Could we have the roll call, please, Linda?
Mrs. Morasti,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden De Nicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich,
Yes.
Mr. Woodward,
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to move items 1 through 17. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. And Linda, could we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Morasti,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden De Nicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich,
Abstain on 17 and yes on the remainder.
Mr. Woodward,
Yes.
And Chris, could you move the personnel items?
Yes, so I'd like to move items 1 through 58 with 2 as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Linda, could you take the roll, please?
Ms. Morasti,
Yes.
Mr. Krieger,
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola,
Yes.
Ms. Prus,
Yes.
Mr. Rizlovich,
Yes.
Mr. Woodward.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on to the board liaison reports. So I just wanted to mention that at the very end, numbers P and Q, Chris was, I asked Chris, because he's been very involved with this, to join the Mayor's Wellness Committee, which is discussing ways of getting more people in town to vaccinate. Did you meet Chris?
Yes, there was one meeting. It's a very group with a lot of impressive resources from different medical versus political versus community items. We really discussed how to extend the improve the vaccination rates among communities in town that are low at the moment, especially sort of through religious leadership was the focus of the meeting. I think that the moment they're viewing the schools as a way that they could possibly fight disinformation, maybe by using us as a way of getting information out to families. And we'll have another meeting tomorrow.
Excellent. And I wanted to add that Rob Magaziner was asked, along with me directly, to be a delegate to the HP Athletic Boosters, which is I think was a great idea on their part. For one thing, they weren't really cognizant of any of the details of the athletic field and that being redone. And we spoke to them, and he's going to attend their meetings and give us feedback, and they'll get feedback from him on what we're doing. And it's a group that we haven't done much with, so I think it's very, very good. And it's a group that's kind of inside our sphere of influence. Does any other board members raise your hand if you've been to any other meetings? I mean, Darcy, please.
I haven't been to a meeting, but as the delegate to the New Jersey School Boards Association Delegate Assembly, I did want to mention that I had sent a resolution that was sent to me, to Mark and to Christina, that is coming from a number of groups in the state that work with English language learners, with a resolution that they're asking that our board take a look at and consider passing. And they would like us to not only pass this resolution, but to bring this resolution also to the Delegate Assembly, to encourage other districts across the state to kind of re-up their commitment to this particular population of students that were hard hit by the pandemic. I've let them know that while, the board will absolutely take a look, and it doesn't seem like it would be an issue to pass it, that getting it to the Delegate Assembly this year with everything going on, maybe it'll be a little tricky, but if we could kind of take a look at that and see if, if Christina could let Susie take a look at that and see if she has any concerns or comments, and then we could take a look at it as a board for our next meeting, with the idea that we would potentially, I would bring it to the Delegate Assembly. I think I might be able to swing it. It's a bit of a tough time of year for all of us to add something else to our plates, but certainly something that would be worthwhile considering making the time for. So, and there is the deadline is like in mid-September, so we would be able to kind of, the deadline for resolutions is in mid-September, so we would make that deadline, and then the Delegate Assembly is in November.
Thank you. Anyone else been to any of these meetings? Okay, if not, Rob, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. I just want to comment. I don't believe I was at the last Board of Health meeting, but the Board of Health came up with some recommendations for us, some of which we have implemented with and they sent them to the full board. But one of those was a vaccine mandate for all employees, a vaccine mandate for all public-facing volunteers working on behalf of the district. And they also recommended a vaccine mandate for all students age 12 and above. in the Highland Park School District. And then the fourth recommendation was universal indoor masking for all students.
So, right, and we got that, and I did speak to Jay Crossan, who was, I thought very helpful, and said many of the things we've heard tonight, but also, I think, again, said a lot of what the board is thinking. So thank you. Michelle, you have your hand up.
Yes, I raised my hand only just to say that I'm very grateful to the other board members for attending these meetings and discussing the issue of COVID in regards to public health and how it affects the school district. And I would love for the school district to, send out representatives into these different committees that are townwide and statewide that would really focus on the needs of people who are going to have to quarantine young children. Like as was discussed in lots of public comment, it's not easy to quarantine a small child or to do virtual learning with small children because they do need, one-on-one instruction with someone, at least to sit with this kid to do the work. It's a job in and of itself. And it does always seem to fall on the female caregivers in our lives. So I just would love for us to keep that top of mind as we go to these different meetings, and to think of ways that we could do a sort of communal quarantine, if that's even possible, with other organizations in town. I know public health might have something to say about that, as far as different ways that we can congregate when we are quarantining for COVID, because I do feel like there's a whole lot of mutual aid that is being untapped, just simply because we're thinking about things the way that we have traditionally thought about things. And, of course, it's never easy to come up with new creative ideas, but if it's possible for people, lots of families have young children. If they're going to have to quarantine, the whole family is going to suffer because the parents cannot bring in money that is necessary to sustain the family. So it's just kind of my shout out to other stay-at-home parents. For a very long time, I've wanted to unionize all of us, make sure that we get acknowledged and paid. And if one more person tells me that motherhood is the most important job in the world, they're going to get a punch in the face, because I don't get a pension and I don't get paid. And that's how we reward people in this society. So please don't tell me that ever. But also, let's think about ways that we can possibly connect people, if nothing else, connect people so that they can quarantine in a pod. Things like that can be done, even just organizationally, but I think that the town needs to be brought into those discussions. As a board, we're the best people I know, but we can't really handle all of the issues that COVID has handed us. So anytime you have any of these committee meetings or organizational meetings in town, please make sure that those families that are going to lose jobs if they take time off, keep them top of mind, please. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you. Anyone else on the board? Okay, so I have no president's report for tonight. So does anyone on the board have old business? Okay, I do have one item of new business, and that is, I had thought we had passed this earlier, and I know we had discussed this more than a month ago, but we apparently did not pass the board goals. And so they were included for review and of board members. So I'd like to move them and get a second, and then we can discuss them, and hopefully we'll pass them and make them our board goals. I did simplify them a lot. There was a lot there before, matching some of the strategic plan, which was very complicated. So I tried to simplify them and primarily try to discuss right up front, trying to get back as much as possible to a more normal a school year in this 2021-2022 school year. So number A, I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the board goals for the 2021-2022 school year as per the attached. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have discussion? And again, I thought we discussed this at least a month ago. I know Marilyn, among others, sent me some comments, and I did make those changes.
I just wanted to say how appreciative I am that they're just short, succinct, to the point, and what we're trying to do. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. I forgot which district. Someone suggested a district. I think maybe Chris. When we started this, so I'm not going to take credit. Someone said, why don't we use a district that has these goals? Because I had looked at other districts, and I found one of them, and I think, again, Chris had sent out, had really nice, succinct, wonderful goals, and I changed them to our goals, but it was so much easier. It's so much easier to read and understand. So thanks, Darcy. Thank you for the compliment. So if seeing no other comments, let's vote on these. Linda, can we take a roll?
Ms. Simorowski?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ms. McFadden DiNicola?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Roslevich?
Yes.
Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Great, thank you, everyone. Okay, so we're back to our second public comment period. I would simply ask the public, I'm happy to listen, but it's very late. Many of us are very tired. So I'm happy to listen, and the board is happy to listen, but try to be succinct. And I don't want to time anyone, but please try to be succinct. And so let's go on. I'll read our little statement. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and reserve this time for your comments. Board policies 164 and 167 establish and regulate the right of the public to participate in public meetings. So if you have something to say, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Mark Rubin, please give your name and address, please.
Hello, Mark Rubin, 66 South Adelaide, Highland Park, New Jersey. I'm sorry to keep the meeting going longer. I just had a few things I wanted to say, and I wanted to wait until after the first public comment so that I didn't have to repeat everything that everyone else has said already. I'm a senior at the high school, and there are just a few concerns I wanted to talk about. So the first one is someone discussed having seating charts in the high school for contact tracing. And I don't know if this is allowed with like legally with HIPAA laws and stuff like that. So it's something to talk to the lawyer about. But if there's a way to separate vaccinated and unvaccinated students based on seating charts, because obviously someone is a lot safer being around a vaccinated student than otherwise. And like, for example, myself, I know remote options are not available, but if it was an option, I would have chosen that, and I'd want to be in the safest position available. The second thing I wanted to talk about was also for attendance. I don't know the situation of if you're possibly allowing more sick days so that people don't feel compelled to come into school even while they're sick, and possibly by adding more attendance, like days that you can come, like more sick days available, it would stop people from coming into the school when they're not feeling well. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about is that I know that you said it's like an ethical dilemma and someone possibly could get fired. And the last thing I want is for anyone to get fired. So I'm not like trying to get anyone in trouble. But I think that it is possible, like if you did pass a vaccine, like a resolution, I know you say it's not enforceable, but if one person sees, oh, Highland Park has a resolution that they're trying to get people vaccinated, if you get one more student vaccinated just because they think that like it is being enforced, that's one more student who's vaccinated. So obviously that's the best thing for the district to keep people healthy and just keep everyone safe, since obviously that's the #1 goal. And also one last thing I just remembered while I was talking is I know that in the report it said that unvaccinated students have to quarantine if they're exposed. But for vaccinated student like myself, if I was exposed to someone within the school, am I allowed to choose to quarantine, like, since I don't want to be further exposed to other people who may test positive? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Christina, actually, while Mark is still there, on the last question, is he allowed to quarantine?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So you are
Thank
allowed
you.
to quarantine. And we have asked for legal advice and and I can't even remember it, it's so late, but your first question as you were, or your first comment, about putting students who are quarantined and not quarantined in separate groups.
Vaccinated.
Yeah, vaccinated and unvaccinated students. We can ask everyone and anybody if they're vaccinated. The problem is people don't have to answer. They literally don't have to answer. So we can ask, and we could assume someone who doesn't answer is unvaccinated. And so then we could put you with the, let's say, 50% of the students, but more likely 30 or 40% who say, yes, we were vaccinated. So that's at least a possibility. But there's roadblocks everywhere. I mean, dealing with the state, I mean, there's roadblocks everywhere, and that's certainly one. But it's a good idea. It's actually a good idea and something I think I saw Christina writing down. So again, thank you. Thank you for commenting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome. Marilyn, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. I saw your hand.
Wait,
Anyone
no,
else?
The darn unmute button. Just a thought while I'm thinking about it. There were a couple of comments about attendance on the part of students. And I wonder, Christine, if we should be putting something like that in the plan. The students are concerned about their attendance, but they want to quarantine or have to quarantine.
So our attendance policy does allow for written documentation from a parent to be at an excused absence. So that's already been in our policy to have more flexibility with attendance for our students. So I would see that moving forward, continuing to be an option, and I wouldn't push back against that.
Okay, thank you.
It may be important to state that in the plan explicitly, like, because I don't even know that all parents really fully understand that their student can be excused now just with a note from them. You know, I think parents just assume that we're like every other district and you need a doctor's note. So, you know, to really explain to families, if your child isn't feeling well and you want to keep them home, just let us know and they're excused. It's not going to count against their attendance.
We will add it to the plan.
Great. I saw Anna's hand first, but she spoke already once tonight. So Ria Onken, could you take the floor, please? And name and address, please.
Hi, this is actually Christina Spiritu, 112 South. Yeah, I'm the mother of Ray Onken.
Okay.
112 South Fifth Avenue. My kids have not been in school for over a year and a half, so I don't know what it is like being in school, but I've been at work since March of 2019. And I guess recently with regards to eating at work, they do, where we can't separate within 3 feet of each other, we do have plexiglass dividers at tables where you can eat and be divided by these plexiglass dividers, which seems to be a bit safer. You can talk to people, and I don't know if that's something being implemented or looked at where space is an issue, like in the class or during lunch. Of course, I would prefer them to be outside and unmasked at whenever possible, but I just wanted to put that out there as something that they've implemented at my work as a safety precaution. That's all, just a comment.
Thank you very much. Anna Haley, why don't you take the floor?
Hi, one of my kids is next to me and they're going to cringe at me saying this. This is actually not about the content for tonight. It's a meeting norm thing. I'm a little curious. I'm pretty sure that our previous superintendent always went by Dr. Taylor. And our interim superintendent does have a doctorate. And I just want to be sure that Dr. Nicosia is actually okay with being referred to as Christina. In the classroom, I have a doctorate. I do go by Anna. That's a better personal choice. I want to make sure it's her choice and that we're not normalizing that because she's a woman. That
We called Scott all the time in meetings, Anna. It's
Okay,
just not
okay.
true.
I'm just, I just,
We're all very informal with each other.
I know, which is great. That's how I am too. I just think it's, you know, she's new. I just want to give her a warm and respectful welcome. Make sure everyone, attendees at the meeting, not just you guys, appreciate that that's the norm versus.
Christina
how-
/ Dr. Nicosia has all of our respect.
Okay.
Thank you for looking out. I appreciate it.
And everyone I know has a doctorate, Anna. And if
No,
I had to call them doctor, seriously, I go to a dinner group on Friday night with 10 people, and I'm probably the only one there without a doctorate. I took a different path in my life. And I say
do
doctor
call
this
Anna.
and doctor that
Yeah.
to everyone I
No,
know.
just our previous superintendent was pretty insistent about titling. I just wanted to have a little
I see.
clarity. I'm
I'll
done.
need to put together a video compilation for you of past meetings on a me calling him Scott.
Okay,
Scott. It'll be
Fair
a
enough.
good
Thank you all for listening to us.
Thank you. No, thank you for bringing it up. I often think about it. I never called Scott Dr. Taylor except maybe once a meeting. And that was it. He was Scott, you know, and that was the way life was. And I feel the same with Christina because she's a great person. So
okay, good deal. All right.
Thank you though. Chris.
Well, can I just ask on that note of welcoming you, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? How do you say the S exactly?
Nicosia.
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 Nicosia, not Nicosia.
Wow.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
I was worried
That's
that I
okay.
was getting it wrong, and I was. I'm
That's
so
okay.
I was
sorry.
wrong too. So it's Nicosia.
Nicosia.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Next,
with
we're
that
all gonna
high
learn how to
note-
say Cimarusty.
Is it really? Say it again.
Chimarusti. Thank you.
With that
Darcy.
high note, are there any other members of the public who want to speak? And if not, I'm going to ask for an adjournment. Okay, seeing no hands, I move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
See.
See you
Enjoy
next
your
time.
vacation, Mark. Go
Thanks.
well.
I'm home shortly. See you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hi.